Chen Guang waited his turn at the school nurse's station and timidly asked the nurse if it could be cured. A red-haired beauty in a white coat and medical mask on her face folded her hands on the table and stared intently at the patient. A little embarrassed, the girl explained that it was a completely normal physiological phenomenon for a young man's age. The boy blushed and asked if he could go in that case. He assumed that the medication would not be needed. Chen Guang turned around to leave. The nurse got up from the table. She said that there was no need to take medicine, but it was something to keep an eye on. The girl slowly approached the patient. He stepped back a little fearfully and asked what exactly he had to watch out for. A little shyly, the nurse shifted the mask to her chin and bent down to the young man's ear. Her cheeks burned with red flame. The girl whispered that this had been going on for days, so he should stop watching certain things. Chen Guang felt excited. He bounced away from the nurse and promised to take better care of himself. The young man waved goodbye and thanked the girl. Even coming out of school, the kid couldn't figure out what was going on. He hadn't watched anything like that lately. Strange things have been happening to him for the last 5 days. Some female voice is talking to the young man in his dreams. It was because of this voice that Chen Guang had not slept well all these days and was tossing and turning from side to side. Moreover, the whole bed was wet because of his dreams. The next morning, the boy woke up and the first thing he did was look under the covers. He realized with horror that nothing had changed. It all started when one of the passengers forgot a mug in his car 5 days ago. The driver couldn't remember the guy's face. It was just an ordinary cheap metal mug with a picture of some ancient Chinese beauty. The girl was depicted with her dark hair fluttering as if performing some kind of dance. The young man angrily suggested that the ailment was due to the fact that he had kept the mug for himself. He even considered becoming a monk, but that would be ridiculous. Chen Guang walked to his luxurious 3-story house located in the shade of the trees. He remembered that the English exam was a month away. At that time, a new cell phone notification came in. Wen wondered where the boy had disappeared to. The young man only now remembered that he had promised the girl to come to the university library and study with her. Turning around in the other direction, Chen Guang ran as fast as he could so as not to make Wen wait for him for long. The library room was empty. There was no one at the tables or among the bookshelves. When he looked closer, he saw his classmate Wen in the far corner. She was looking at him thoughtfully with her clear blue eyes. After listening to the girl's proposal, Chen Guang blushed. He couldn't believe that she wasn't joking and was seriously offering a deal. The boy exclaimed that it was too much. After such an immodest proposal, his heart might not be able to take it. His interlocutor replied that things had gotten too serious. He has neglected his studies and spends his free time only on part-time cab work. The young man glanced at the girl's large breasts in embarrassment and said unabashedly that this was out of line. Wen couldn't take it anymore and slammed her hands on the table. She shouted at the boy and said she would fulfill her promise. Touching her chest, the girl reminded that Chen Guang could kiss her there if he could pass the 4th level of English. She smiled and said it was okay because they were friends, and friends sometimes have to make small sacrifices. The young man blushed like a boiled cancer. He realized that he would not be able to find peace of mind after such a promise. The boy stared once more at the impressive bust of his companion. It seemed unbelievable that he would see her without clothes. Suspecting foul play, Chen Guang frowned and wondered if his classmate was joking. It was like a cheap trick. The girl was a little embarrassed. She smiled affectionately and assured me that she was very serious. In fact, Van found something in the guy's laptop and decided to test what he could do. The young man didn't know it and almost danced with joy. The student unfolded his last paper. Out of 10 assignments, Chen Guang had not done a single one correctly. She stated that she was trying to motivate him. The young man thanked the girl profusely for her help in English. It was a bit strange, but it could work. After a short conversation, the guy started working hard and studying English textbooks. Wen sat beside him and watched. Near the end of the day, Chen Guang walked out of the library and heaved a sigh of relief. He got into his red car and drove home. The promise of the girl did not give rest, so the guy, even before going to bed, continued to study the notes and methodological materials. Late in the evening, the young man collapsed exhaustedly on his bed, closing his eyes. He had been very tired during the day. Suddenly, an interesting thought popped into his head. Chen Guang opened his eyes and began to dream that it would be nice to wake up knowing the language perfectly. The strange voice in his head made itself known again. The girl demanded blood in exchange for any skill, even English. The young man woke up in a sweat. He had a terrible dream. He shouted that he was not ready to pass the exam by paying with his life. The girl was annoyingly insistent. Chen Guang swiveled his head, trying to get rid of the voice in his head. He was fed up with it. The Chinese woman painted on the mug angrily demanded to hear her out to the end. She didn't need all the guy's blood, just a few drops from his nose. The girl told me that her magic glass contains 3,000 dimensions. With a dimension, the host can gain any skill. The young man no longer listened to her. Turning his back to the wall, Chen Guang snored sweetly. He had finally managed to fall asleep. The voice from the cup continued to shout angrily that the guy was condemning her to certain death. You don't need a lot of liquid. Just a few drops will do. The next morning, the young man immediately went to the university library to continue preparing for the exam. While writing out the rules in the textbook, Chen Guang recalled last night's nightmare. Some vampire woman had offered to teach him English. A glimpse of the girl's ample breasts made him blush, and he thought it was because of her. It was because of Wen that he couldn't sleep tonight. A classmate noticed his gaze and smiled bashfully. She asked where the boy had just been looking. The student, who had been caught hot on the trail, blushed even more and immediately turned away. Van watched him dreamily. She remembered an incident and wondered why the young man had come to her aid that day without hesitation. That memorable evening, the girl went to a computer club. She needed to find some information. When she was about to leave, she was obstructed by 2 ambulances, unencumbered by intelligence. Smiling lasciviously, they made an immodest proposal. Wen did not say a word. She looked hatefully at the offenders and told herself that she would beat the insolent man if he didn't get off. It was at this moment that this strange guy, Chen Guang, stepped in between them and covered the girl with himself. He demanded that the outrage stop. The guy looked at his rivals without a shadow of fear and demanded that they immediately stop harassing the student. He smiled at the big men and winked cheerfully at them. He smiled at the men and winked cheerfully at them. Those 2 immediately swooped down on him and started beating him up. Chen Guang barely had time to cover his head. One of the thugs said that the Wujing district belonged to them. The girl couldn't take it anymore. The hatred in her eyes was enough for 10 people. Bravely, she lunged at the enemies and punched the nearest one in the jaw. Losing one of his teeth, the big man yelped in surprise. Like the wind, she swept between the insolent men and struck them blow after blow. The astonished men couldn't keep up with her movements. At this moment, Chen Guang finally managed to get up from the ground and pulled the girl's hand. He said that someone had called the police. They had better leave. At that moment, the beauty was so angry that she didn't know who was in her way. Her eyes were still shooting lightning bolts. Instantly reacting to the potential threat, Wen turned around and drove her fist into the young man's torso. He groaned in pain. The boy felt as if he were about to die from the intense pain. Images from his past flashed before his eyes. Losing consciousness, Chen Guang saw Wen at the last moment. She was almost crying as she realized her blunder. Because of her, an innocent person had suffered. When he had finished the page, he put the pen aside, taking advantage of the moment. He could rest for a while. The guy noticed that the student was looking at him rather strangely and wondered what she was thinking right now. The girl winked slyly at her interlocutor and recalled their first meeting. She still didn't understand how such a weakling had rushed to her aid. Chen Guang frowned and replied that he wouldn't have interfered if he knew beforehand that the fragile girl would beat up the 3 guys. A paper airplane flew over his head, but the young man didn't see it anymore. He continued to study the textbook intensely. A few hours later, the interlocutors left the library. The student thought unhappily that with his knowledge he would have to give up on Wen. At that time, someone behind her called loudly, trying to catch up with her. The student looked up in surprise, trying to guess whose voice it was. Zheng He appeared in front of the companions. The guy in the smart suit smiled and said that he would have taken their place on the roof if he had known that Wen would be in the library. He looked contemptuously at the young man and added that such a beautiful girl should not be socializing with all kinds of beggars. Chen Guang frowned and glared angrily at his opponent. This impudent person was clearly overdoing it by showing off in front of the girl. Wen didn't like Zheng He's remark either. She stomped her foot angrily, almost stepping on the guy's brand new shoes. Looking directly into the young man's eyes, the student demanded that he immediately go somewhere else and not disturb them. Chen Guang chuckled in his heart at Zheng He's unrequited love. All day long he had been trying to get the girl's attention. The young man faked a smile and declared that Wen was funny. In fact, he only needed to get close to her because of her family's wealth. The student frowned and stated that she wasn't kidding. She urged her not to molest her. Zheng He became angry. The girl assumed that the young man was purposely trying to make her angry. The boy smiled and said that he liked her. He saw that their conversation had attracted everyone's attention. Soon the whole university would witness his unrequited love. Carelessly pushing the guy away, Zheng He stated that a frog could not become a swan in the company of a swan. It might be accidentally crushed. Chen Guang didn't even seem to pay attention to this. He smiled and asked if the young man knew the difference between a swan and a frog. His interlocutor turned around and proudly exclaimed that they were only different in status. He wouldn't understand that. The guy laughed and pulled the girl with him. He replied that the swans were actually sick with bird flu. Since one was already infected, it was time for the other to leave. Van laughed and winked cheerfully at her companion. She liked the way the student had put the snooty girl in her place. Zheng He glared at the couple with hatred. His eyes spewed lightning bolts. He swore that he would make them regret those words. After saying goodbye to the girl, Chen Guang engaged in private passenger transportation and arrived at the parking lot at the end of the day. Today his red VW was driving around town a lot, and there were plenty of people interested. The young man was very tired during the day. He leaned back in the driver's seat, staring thoughtfully ahead. Unwittingly, the boy's eyes stopped on the cup. Chen Guang frowned and began to stare at her intently. He remembered that his troubles had started the day his client had left her in the cab. The cup had a picture of a beautiful dancer on it. The quality of the drawing was too good for cheap Chinese tableware. The young man gingerly touched the image, afraid that the sensation was real. For a while he believed in the witch's existence. Fortunately, nothing had changed as he thought it would. There was no sorceress. It was just a dream. He could go home. Suddenly, the same strange female voice echoed in the guy's head. It demanded that he remove his hand from her breast immediately. Chen Guang turned his head around in surprise. He couldn't understand where the strange voice came from. There was no one around. The parking lot was completely empty. All the cars were parked with their headlights off. There were clearly no drivers here. The storage rooms were locked and bolted. It's unlikely that someone locked themselves inside to play a prank on him. Walking through the dark parking lot, the young man began to believe it might have been a ghost. He didn't know that his own shadow was grinning maliciously. The boy began to breathe heavily. He calmed down and recognized that there were no such things as ghosts. Maybe he was just tired. The pill would help him. Chen Guang ran towards the parking lot exit. He knew that he needed to get a good rest now. In the morning, he would see a doctor for mental disorders. Suddenly, a silhouette emerged from the semi-darkness. He had to stop to avoid hitting it. It was Jay Hay. He came along with his men. The guy haughtily greeted the offender and said that he was waiting for him. Chen Guang immediately understood everything. Of course, this coward had decided to avenge his shame and had come to settle the score with him. Fortunately, the young man carried various gadgets to help him survive on the streets, just in case. He remembered well the day he was beaten up at the computer club and was ready for a fight. The guy demanded that Zheng He give way to him. His opponent smirked smugly. "This insolent man is giving you a reason to fight. You don't even have to pick on him." The young man demanded that Chen Guang knelt down in front of him and begged for mercy. In that case, he would not cripple him severely. "Zheng!" He shouted that otherwise he wouldn't be very ceremonious and would make the guy disabled for life. The student didn't answer anything. His eyes blazed with hatred. The young man reached into his pocket and pulled out a telescopic baton. With a flick of his hand, the small handle transformed into a massive metal bat. Chen Guang now looked formidable. One of the opponents beaten in the club exclaimed worriedly that this guy had a club. They better back off. Zheng He shouted that the baton wouldn't save him. 6 people could definitely handle one. He would regret being born. The ringleader's words cheered up his gang. All 5 men ran toward the boy. He wouldn't be able to overpower them all. Chen Guang was alert and wasted no time. Without letting his opponents get close enough, he struck the one closest to him. The first blow came on the head of the very guy who was worried about the young man's possession of a baton. Blood spurted from the fighter's shattered temple. He grimaced unhappily, pressed his hand to his head, and shouted that he had been hit in the head. Blocking Chen Guang's blow, the second man put his arm out. The baton hit his hand. The man grimaced in hellish pain. The remaining 3 fighters took advantage of the young man's confusion and decided to capture him while he was busy. One of the men put his arm firmly around his shoulder. The second one immediately punched the guy in the face, and the third one gave him a strong blow in the stomach. Chen Guang was already barely on his feet. His white t-shirt was stained with blood. A trickle of salty red liquid flowed from his mouth. The t-shirted bastard had woken up by now and pushed his brother aside. He vowed to break the boy's bones. The man approached his assailant and swung a piece of pipe at him. He was determined to avenge that blow. Without a second's hesitation, the enraged guy began lowering the heavy pipe cutter onto his victim's head. The lethal weapon flying with a whistle reflected in the student's eyes. The young man realized that he had one last chance. He dodged at the last moment and set the metal cup under the pipe's impact, crouching on the floor along with it. At the same second, Chen Guang angrily struck his opponent's stomach with his telescopic baton. Crouching in pain, the bulky man let go of the pipe. The big guy grabbed his side and screamed in a voice that wasn't his own that the guy had broken his rib. At that moment, he was kicked in the face. The body of the lying Ambo was trembling. Chen Guang put his baton to his head and demanded that everyone leave the building or else someone would have to die. The 4 fighters watched the boy warily. Their faces turned white with terror. It was obvious that this guy wasn't going to joke around. Zheng He realized where this was going and rushed to run. He shouted that he wouldn't be intimidated so easily. Next time it would be different. The young man got angry and threatened his opponent with a club. He warned him that if he said one more word, he would be crippled. The leader ran as fast as he could and shouted as he went that they were leaving. The other 4 ran as fast as they could. Chen Guang turned away contemptuously. These 6 guys can't even fight properly. They only look like cocky roosters. Despite his victory, the boy himself was barely on his feet. The blood from his shattered lip continued to drip onto the floor. The young man was absent-mindedly twirling the cup in his hands at this time. The drops fell alternately on the cup with the girl's picture on it and on the floor. Finally, one drop fell directly on the Chinese woman's face. A red glow appeared around the cup. The cup itself glowed as brightly as if there were several light bulbs inside. Embarrassed with pleasure, the girl exclaimed that her patience had paid off. She had waited too long as it was. Finally, the blood spilled out. Chen Guang didn't notice any of this. He was busy thinking about the recent battle and holding the valuable artifact by the handle. The young man swore to himself that next time he would definitely beat Zheng He to a pulp if he dared to cling to him. The boy examined his cup carefully. He was glad he had found such a sturdy thing. It hadn't even cracked after being hit with the pipe. This late in the evening, almost no one was sleeping in the dormitory. There were voices coming from the room where the young man lived. The guy's roommate Bai Fan created a server for the game and impatiently asked who would play with him. Xiong Jingkei exclaimed that he would enter the game in just 1 minute. Need to finish preparing the character. Lin Jingwei, wearing a tracksuit, sat silently at his computer. He was still pondering over Bai Fan's proposal. At this moment, the door opened. Chen Guang appeared on the threshold. Xiong Jingkei asked where the guy had been all this time. The young man stripped off his clothes and tossed them carelessly into a far corner. Tomorrow he would figure out what to do with it next. The guy picked up his other clothes and noisily placed the metal cup on the bedside table. He went to sleep and buried his face in his pillow. Even through his sleep, Chen Guang admitted that he had been working all day and was very tired. To everyone's dissatisfaction, the dormitory administration had de-energized all the rooms. They had to go to bed as well. The morning came. All the students had scattered in different directions, and no one prevented the young man from sleeping peacefully. The cup with the picture of the Chinese woman continued to stand on his nightstand. Everything was going on as usual. Suddenly, a white glow appeared around the cup. It slowly enveloped everything around it, including the boy and his bed. Someone's hand lightly flicked the student's nose and suggested that he wake up. Chen Guang grudgingly waved away. He wanted to sleep. The cup girl went to radical measures and pulled the guy's ear. He shouted that they didn't let him sleep properly. His conscience was ruined. The boy realized that sleep would not be allowed anymore. He sat up on the bed, wiping his eyes with his fists after sleeping. The young man assumed it was his roommate Jing Kei's pranks. Suddenly, Chen Guang found himself sitting on some mirrored surface in the sky. He couldn't understand what was happening. The girl said that the young man is looking in the wrong place. The Lord is right behind him. The boy turned around perplexed. He was curious to know what kind of place this was and who was called the Overlord. Chen Guang couldn't believe his eyes. He was willing to bet that there was no such thing, but the coincidence was too obvious. Right in front of him stood the very same girl who was pictured on the teacup. Moreover, she was dressed the same way. The Lord of 3,000 Dimensions did not like that the young man was staring at her so intently and threatened to gouge out his eyes. Chen Guang slapped himself on the back of his head, checking if he was awake. He shouted that he didn't understand anything. He didn't owe money to anyone if it was stolen by bandits. The girl convincingly tapped the young man on the back of the head. The boy immediately shut up in surprise. When he saw the seductive clothes of his interlocutor, he was embarrassed. The blood from his nose flowed in streams. The transparent-clothed lordess frowned at the student and stated that she didn't spend a lot of effort to be called a thief. Chen Guang couldn't adequately converse with the girl right now. He looked at her with greedy eyes, smugly scratching his belly. The warrior was angry. The fingers of her right hand clenched into a fist. She couldn't hold back any longer. The young man belatedly shouted for her to stop. No need to hit him. At the same instant, he felt a hard blow on his left cheek. After pinning the guy's arm behind his back, the lordess told him that they were now inside a magic glass. Chen Guang almost cried out in pain and said that she was just sick. The girl demanded that the guy stop being rude to her and continued to throw punches. The young man barely had time to cover himself from them. It turned out that the sacred glass recognized his blood. Now the guy must pass the test of 3,000 dimensions and help the Lord to return to her body. Suddenly, Chen Guang felt an incredible lightness in his body. His feet lifted off the ground. He slowly began to rise into the sky. The young man clearly felt that his body was being sucked into itself by some kind of vortex. The girl shouted that he would be able to come back if he could hold out for 6 months. For a while, the guy flew in the void with his eyes closed and didn't react to anything. He didn't even want to think. When he dared to open one eye, he almost died of fear. He really didn't like what was happening downstairs. The shining blade of a sharp blade whistled right in front of his face. Chen Guang shrieked. He had never been so close to death before. In the same second, his head and neck were separated. He could have sworn he remembered every moment of his death. Strangely enough, it turned out that the young man was still alive. He looked down in fear at all those crazy people running around with swords. The sharp blade glinted again in close proximity to the boy's face. This time he deflected his head just in time and survived. By chance, Chen Guang was thrown onto a large sailing ship. He quickly got to his feet and looked around perplexed. It looked like he had come back from the dead. The men around him were fighting with swords and sabers. He himself was pinned to the side by a man with a long blade. The young man did not understand what was happening. The boy tried to resist, but still he was killed time after time. After a few deaths, he realized that this was the test. Pulling the sword out of the wound, Chen Guang remembered that he could only be reborn 100 times. He needed to fight well so that he wouldn't stay here forever. It was at that moment that one of the pirates sneakily stabbed him in the back with a blade. The bloody blade protruded from his ribcage. The young man almost cried with frustration. He had been so excited to get out and deal with the goddess, but now he had to start all over again. Barely resurrected, the guy grabbed his sword and rushed forward, dodging the enemy's attack. At least at the first stage, he managed to survive. Now the forces were evenly matched. 3 men in orange headscarves took up a circular defense near the mast. There were 3 attackers, too. The fight ended rather quickly. Chen Guang and his comrades went down to the dining hall. The young man took his friend some beer and a couple pieces of meat. At one of the tables, he overheard a conversation about a giant hand the size of the sea from the legend. The sea itself was against an invisible wall. The boy thought for a moment. He had a strange feeling that he knew exactly what he was talking about, even though he had never heard of the legend before. Suddenly, Chen Guang realized everything. The invisible wall meant the walls of the cup, and the huge hand belonged to himself. In a strange way, the boy found himself back aboard the ship. He turned his head grudgingly, watching the battle between ally and pirate. Turning around to face one of the enemies, Chen Guang straightened his leg and kicked the blonde-haired man in the chest. The pirate began to lose his balance. The young man took advantage of this and chopped off his opponent's head in a leap while looking out for enemies. Crossing his blade with another pirate, the boy cursed the mug, the goddess, and the pirates themselves. He swore to himself to get out of here. When it was over, Chen Guang changed into light-colored clothes and a red cloak. The girl at the helm introduced him as the new deputy captain of the ship. One of the fighters said enviously that the young man had managed to achieve such a status in only 6 months. His partner reminded him that he was a master fighter. Chen Guang remembered that all these half a year he had started over every time. 20 battles had made him a master. Looking up at the sky, the young man breathed a sigh of relief. Today was his last day. He would finally leave this place and take his revenge on the goddess. An unknown force dragged him into the celestial portal. As he climbed higher and higher, he wished good luck to his allies on the ship. Beauty Wen worriedly watched the boy who had been studying too hard for the exam and was now sleeping right at the table. He came up so fast that the girl didn't have time to react. The young man with his head hit her right in the forehead. The student cried out indignantly. She told Chen Guang that he slept under the table all night. Surprised that he had so much strength, she was in a lot of pain. The young man asked in surprise if it had really only been one night. The girl asked excitedly what was happening to him. The boy joked that he'd just gotten off on the wrong foot. Wen said that he could get himself in a coffin before the exam. She offered to get something to eat. Chen Guang willingly agreed. He didn't mind having a snack. After waving goodbye to her friend, the girl left the room. Once the young man was left to himself, he strode across the room and was surprised to realize that his body retained the strength and skills he had acquired on the ship. Chen Guang sat at the table and looked at the cup with the image of the goddess with hatred. She was the reason for all the trouble. The girl winked slyly and asked how he liked the challenge. She explained that the battle at sea was not considered difficult. The young man tossed the cup into the air with anger and shouted that he had been dragged into this strange world without asking his wish. The lordess closed her eyes and replied that there was nothing she could do. The boy was already on the ship. There was no way to get off it. Chen Guang got even more angry and grabbed the cup. He squealed that he wasn't going to participate in this anymore. It wasn't interesting. The goddess explained that the young man became the lord of the magic goblet as soon as he spilled his blood on it. If he refused, he would be killed. It would count as a failure. The lord smiled and suggested that he look at it differently. Having barely started participating, he had already gained some benefits. Chen Guang reluctantly agreed, but set his own condition. Every time after the trial, he would need some time to recover. Today, the young man decided to take a break from studying for the exam. He spent the whole day working as a private driver. Just as the guy was waiting for another order, the phone rang in the car. It was his father, Chen Guoli. He asked to check on his mom in the hospital since he couldn't do it himself due to negotiations. Chen Guang reminded him to transfer the money for the medicine. The man hastily replied that he shouldn't worry about money. The main thing was that his son should study well. The young man held his head. Their family already had hundreds of thousands of yuan in debt, and they needed 20,000 yuan monthly for their mother's medicine. The father works hard and cheers up the family, but he himself can only earn 15,000 a month. There's a new notification on my phone. The cab service had received an order. Chen Guang decided that he would think about it later. At the end of the day, the young man left the parking lot. He was pleased with himself. This time he wasn't the least bit tired, even though he had been driving all day. Waiting for him outside was the beautiful Wen in a light blue dress and a small purse. She had decided to surprise him. Sneaking up on the guy from the back, the student hugged his arm and said hello with a smile. Chen Guang was slightly startled by the surprise. The girl noticed the strong changes in the young man's body and wondered where he got such biceps from. He smiled and replied that he practiced every day. It was normal. In fact, the young man was displeased that Wen had noticed it so quickly. The student smiled and took her chin thoughtfully. She admitted that with the biceps, the guy was much prettier. Two people appeared on the road right in front of the couple. Zheng He brought the head of the university's taekwondo group with him this time. Chen Guang assessed the danger and demanded that Wen hide. The girl instantly took cover behind a pillar nearby. Fatty Jin in a combat kimono exclaimed that the baton wouldn't help this time. He would break the guy's bones. Zheng. He couldn't wait to see the shameful defeat of his opponent. He shouted that there was no need to chat with this type. Beating him was enough. The martial artist leaped forward, at the same time straightening his leg for a powerful kick. The young man subtly took a step to the side. At the moment of impact, he blocked his opponent's leg and grabbed it. Jin couldn't believe the brat was able to resist. Chen Guang toppled the fatty to the ground and angrily promised that he would massacre him now. He shouldn't have attacked. Jin didn't make it to the ground. Holding him by the scruff of the neck, the young man kicked his opponent in the back with hatred. Van peered carefully out from behind cover. She was ready to help if needed. The girl couldn't believe that it was really Chen Guang. The guy kept beating the fat man as if he were an inexperienced fighter. Jin couldn't keep up with his blows. After playing with the head of the section to his heart's content, the young man kicked him in the stomach with all his might. The taekwondo master flew aside. The force of the blow was enough for him to hit Zheng He with his body mass. The two opponents fell to the ground together. The young man got up from the ground, trying to open his black eye. He had no words to express his opinion to Chen Guang. The student grabbed his opponent by the scruff of the neck and muttered through his teeth that he wasn't going to mess with him. You shouldn't bring your acquaintances. Zheng He roared and said that he was misunderstood. The young man reminded him that yesterday he had sent a spy, and today he had sent a martial arts master. Chen Guang threw his opponent to the ground and declared that this was his last warning. Next time, he would kill him. Late in the evening, Wen was walking down the street and it was as if she was talking to herself. She asked to talk to Zheng Yun and to reason with his son. The man hiding in the shadows suggested that he check on Chen Guang. He is very strange. The girl refused. The young man is her friend. Walking down the path, the student looked up at the sky and thoughtfully asked herself how many more secrets Chen Guang was hiding within himself. In the meantime, the young man drove to the lake, which was within the city limits. The evening sunset on the treetops was endless. There was such a superb view from this spot that Chen Guang decided to take a couple pictures and took out his phone. Suddenly, someone put a hand on his shoulder. The boy was surprised. Just a moment ago, no one had been there. A man in black clothing with a raised collar said hello to the young man and offered to follow him. We need to talk. Chen Guang immediately threw his hand off his shoulder and frowned, saying that the interlocutor was not his type. He had better unhook himself. The man smirked faintly. The boy's joke pleased him. He just didn't realize who he was dealing with. The young man watched the stranger. He struck the trunk of a nearby tree with his palm without moving. A blue glow appeared in that spot. Before the boy's eyes, the trunk cracked. The tree collapsed. The man once again repeated his demand to walk with him. Chen Guang faked a pathetic semblance of a smile. He realized that he wouldn't be able to resist this strange stranger. The young man bowed politely and said he was ready to go wherever he needed to go. There was no need for further heroics. The man walked forward along the path, and the lad had no choice but to follow him uncomplainingly. In one of the trees, Chen Guang noticed one of the university's CCTV cameras. This was where the university grounds ended. Chen Guang stated that the sun had long since set, and he was afraid of the dark. The young man offered to talk on the spot. He actually had his own considerations. They had passed the last video camera, and it was dangerous to go any further. The stranger smirked and declared that he was just a brat. The man curled his fingers into a fist and concentrated the power in his hand. Quickly turning to the guy, he crouched down and punched his companion in the stomach with his fist, testing his fighting skills. From the sudden impact, Chen Guang flew several meters away and hit his back into a tree several meters high. The tree staggered, but stood. The young man landed close to the roots, ricocheting off the trunk. A massive dent was left on the bark of the tree. Chen Guang felt a strong numbness in his arm. This type was clearly not easy. The stranger approached the guy and wondered why he didn't use his inner strength. Energy was still flowing from his fist. The young man asked in surprise what other inner strength was. They live in the modern world, not in medieval China. The stranger seemed disappointed. He looked intently at the boy and realized that he wasn't pretending. He really didn't know anything. Suddenly, the man's cell phone rang in his back pocket. The display showed Van's number. He reached for the phone. The stranger immediately guessed who was calling him. He suspected that the girl knew where they were and said goodbye to the guy. Before the young man's eyes, the man simply vanished into thin air. Chen Guang fell on his heels in surprise and crawled back to the tree. He couldn't understand how the strange type managed to do it. The boy suspected that he had used inner strength. The young man ran down the road, hoping to catch up with the stranger, and asked him to wait for him. He would like to become an apprentice. At this time, the man glumly watched the student from behind the tree. He remembered that even Wen didn't want to teach him. But Chen Guang really wasn't easy. Without knowing about his inner strength, he was able to survive his blow. Besides, his arm still hurt. That evening, the young man drove Van and her friend to the bridge, as they had requested. The girl thanked him for the ride. She looked in the driver's window and said she had a shoot today. If you're interested, you can come in and watch. The boy smiled and declined, covering his eyes. Unfortunately, he was very busy tonight and would not be able to attend. Suddenly, a strong flash illuminated the surroundings. A great rumble came from the side of the bridge. The blast wave blew Wen's hair apart. A white glow appeared in the distance. It was getting closer and closer. The windows of the nearby houses lit up one after another, and everyone was surprised. Chen Guang unbuckled his seatbelt and pushed the door open. He decided to go and see what happened. As soon as he jumped out of the car, the guy ran as fast as he could. Maybe there were people there who needed help. When he got to the bridge, he was surprised to see the wooden barge used for filming was billowing in the center of the river. The whole filming pavilion was going up in flames right before our eyes. Burning boards were flying onto the deck. They were not dumped into the water in time. Some actors fell into the water. Some actress in heels tried to hold on to the narrow ledge of the stern of the barge. The rescuers responded quickly. They arrived by boat and jumped into the water. Each of them dragged 2 lifebuoys. The old man at the bridge said that he had seen the whole thing. Something exploded in the back of the pavilion and started a big fire. Chen Guang immediately realized that the engine had probably exploded. It must be hidden deep, so it didn't look like sabotage. A girl in a yellow dress ran up to the bridge and shouted that there were 2 actresses hanging high in the air on a set. The young man looked closely. Indeed, 2 girls with the help of a winch and safety straps were hanging on the very top of the ship and looking doomed to the shore. They tried to free themselves from the safety ropes, but the fastening jammed and the actress admitted to a colleague that she couldn't manage. A red-bearded director wearing a blue t-shirt and cap with the movie company logo demanded that the girls be put down immediately. The mechanic pressed the remote control button several times. His face was covered with sweat. The man assumed that there was a short circuit. He could not lower the actresses to the deck. The personnel who could keep their feet on the water tried to swim as far away from the explosive pavilion as possible. There was a splash, and the barge overturned. The girls on the bridge screamed in terror. Those 2 actresses upstairs had capsized with the ship and would not be able to get out. Chen Guang realized that time had gone by seconds. He quickly stripped down to his swimming trunks and asked the old man to look after his clothes. As he sprinted, the young man swung over the fence and jumped off the high bridge. He entered the water like a torpedo, working his legs vigorously. The guy swam so fast that the splashing splashed the lifeguard and one of the actors. They wondered who was swimming so fast. Chen Guang counted down the time by seconds. He knew that he would save the girls if he had enough time. He had already been swimming for 20 seconds. At the 30th second, the young man dived under the ship. One of the girls tried to swim toward him, but she was exhausted. At the 35th second, the guy picked up the actress. She hugged her rescuer and together with him began to rise. At the 40th second, Chen Guang pushed the girl to the surface and immediately dived down. She took a greedy gulp of air. At the depths, the young man saw 2 silhouettes hanging from ropes. He realized that they were the 2 actresses who could not free themselves. It had been a full minute since he had jumped from the bridge. The guy was rapidly descending downward, trying to keep his body upright. The unfortunate actresses, thrown to their fate, were still trying their last efforts to free themselves from the insurance. At the 80th second, the young man was very close and saw that one of the girls had already begun to lose consciousness. She was short of breath. The second actress turned back with a pleading look in her eyes, trying to bring her colleague to her senses. She didn't want to die ignominiously at such a young age. Chen Guang forcefully tore at the girl who needed more help. The second actress fell down, a small golden crown flying off her head. She watched sadly as the savior sailed away with her partner and regretted not being in her shoes herself. The young man wasn't going to leave her in the lurch. In the 91st second, he tried to disengage the safety harness. Another 9 seconds passed. The girl finally managed to disengage the belt buckle and free herself from the main belt. After another second, Chen Guang rushed to her aid, taking the actress who was already unconscious with her. They were swimming towards each other. The girl was holding on with all her might. The boy had counted down 102 seconds. Once they got close, the guy unbuckled the fastener on the actress's chest and released her completely from the restraints. The girl couldn't hold on much longer and lost consciousness. Chen Guang picked her up at the last moment. He took the actresses under his arm and began to climb up rapidly. They were both out of breath by now. There was practically no time. When he surfaced with the beauties, the young man took a greedy gulp of air and breathed a sigh of relief. A little more, and he would have suffocated himself. The director at this time was almost tearing his hair out in frustration. Those two girls are tightly bound, and his career is over if they die. At this time, a huge water pillar rose right in front of the man's eyes, and on top of it was some guy and both actresses. Chen Guang flew straight into the red rubber boat and demanded that everyone make room for him. The surprised director and mechanic ran off in different directions. The 3 rescued men fell right in the middle of the boat. The director excitedly asked how those girls were feeling. The young man shouted that they were not breathing now, no need to distract him. From the university course, the guy remembered well that in such cases a drowned person is given a heart massage, and he pressed the girl's chest several times. After the massage, one should have breathed in air. Chen Guang leaned towards the girl's mouth and did the procedure. The rescued actress started coughing up water. The young man realized that she was fine. It was necessary to rescue her partner. The director and the mechanic looked enviously at the rescuer, who kissed the beauties only because he had saved them from destruction. A few seconds later, the girls were at full health. They were both breathing heavily, still not believing in the miraculous rescue. Chen Guang furtively looked at the actress's lush breasts while pretending to close his eyes. He admiringly thought that the girls were very beautiful. There were cries on the bridge that the actresses had been rescued by some fishman in just his underpants. Everyone wanted to take his picture. The guy only now realized he was in his underwear. The young man waved goodbye to the director and said that it was time for him to leave. The man looked at him in surprise. The guy had his reasons for doing that. He didn't want his picture taken, so someone would recognize him. After climbing out of the water and onto the shore, Chen Guang took shelter behind a large rock. An old man in a straw hat was fishing not far from him. To the boy's surprise, his whereabouts were discovered very quickly. People with cameras were approaching from the side of the bridge. There was no other way out. The young man rushed to the old man and snatched his hat from him. He promised to return it soon. Against the backdrop of a beautiful sunset, the savior of the beauties ran along the sandy shore, fleeing from fans who wanted a photo to remember. Meanwhile, the actresses were brought to the shore. A staff member asked the girls to go to the canteen and do an ECG. The equipment had just been brought there. Chen Guang took cover behind a tree. He finally managed to get away from his pursuers. Unfortunately, the young man did not see that the movie studio employees were coming straight towards him. The director recognized him immediately and made a sign to stay put. He wanted at least to know the name of the man who had saved his career. The boy froze in horror. This was the end. There was nowhere else to hide. The fans were looking for him behind the bushes. The actresses were ahead of him. One of the girls stared in amazement at her savior standing there in just her underwear. The second actress had her hands covering her eyes. The mechanic was the first to realize what needed to be done, and handed the young man a large yellow towel to keep him from embarrassing the staff. Chen Guang quickly turned around and thanked the man. The girl continued to stare at her savior with confusion. Immodest thoughts were floating around in her head. She was even ready to give herself to him, and made plans for a future honeymoon and family. The second actress pointed her finger at the young man and asked her partner if this was the guy who saved them. Yeg was even more embarrassed. Twisting her hair around her finger, she replied that it was indeed him. The actress worriedly touched the forehead of her interlocutor. She noticed that the girl was blushing. Yeg guffawed that she was fine, but it wouldn't hurt to get checked out at the hospital. The actress checked her forehead just in case. After the examination, she would have to approach the rescuer to thank him personally. Yeg blushed even more. In order not to give herself away, she had to lower her eyes down. Meanwhile, the mechanic had brought Chen Guang a knight's golden suit glistening in the sun. The young man was greatly indignant. This suit is very expensive. He'd rather wear plain clothes. The mechanic laughed and said there was only knight's armor available now. Better take the one they give you. The man asked to have lunch with him. In his mind, he begged the guy to seize the moment and make acquaintances. Chen Guang grabbed his armor and refused to eat the meal. His cab could have been evacuated, and then there would be no work. The mechanic demanded a stop and pulled out a large bag of bank-wrapped money. Pulling out a thick wad of $100 bills, the man silently held it out to the rescuer. Chen Guang rejoiced at the sight of money, but replied that it was unseemly to take money for help. The mechanic smiled and said the guy deserved the money and could take it without even thinking twice. The young man snatched the wad of money from his hands with lightning speed. He told himself that in their time money was not to be refused. The guy thanked the man and said goodbye. He has to go, something might happen to the car. Running out of the room, Chen Guang had already bumped into the director at the door. The speed was too great, and as a result the two men collided forehead to forehead. After the painful blow, the director, who was coming in the door, cried out indignantly. Chen Guang politely apologized. The man appreciated his spectacular appearance in his armor. He offered to star in a movie. The young man replied that he had never studied to be an actor. The director put his hand on his shoulder and exclaimed that there was nothing wrong with it. He would not be taken on the main role right away. Chen Guang asked if aspiring actors were paid a lot, but immediately realized that it wasn't very polite. The director said he was willing to pay 100,000 if the guy lasted 30 seconds in the frame. The young man was simply amazed by such a generous offer. For 100,000, he could pay for 5 months of medicine. Chen Guang accepted the offer. 30 seconds meant nothing. He had been portraying a pirate for 20 years. Dong Xiaogong said that in a couple days, filming will start. He will definitely cast the guy then. The actresses had already changed their clothes, but they came too late. Yag asked how the director could let that young man go. The second girl said they wanted to thank the rescuer and had even prepared money, but now it was all gone. Dong Xiaogong winked slyly. He revealed that in a couple of days the young man would come to the shoot. It was a decent distance from the movie studio to the bridge where the cab stayed. Chen Guang didn't get there until the evening. While running across the bridge, he saw a white car. 2 men were standing beside it. Running closer, Chen Guang realized with horror that one of them was a traffic police inspector. He got very agitated and started making excuses that he was just saving people, so he left the car. The inspector recognized the guy and shook his hand. He stated that he would not take points off his driver's license today. Random passers-by began taking pictures of the young man and admiring him. He became very famous. Meanwhile, the actresses were at their luxury suite in a high-rise in the city. Jade settled down on the big green sofa. She was absorbed in her thoughts and gazed at the hat with loving eyes. Yue walked into the room after her shower, wiping her head with a towel. She wondered what was so special about the hat. The girl pressed her hat to her lips in embarrassment and quietly replied that it was that guy's thing. Yue laughed and jumped on her back. She said that Yag had finally grown up and fallen in love. The phone with the demon head-shaped keychain that lay on the table vibrated and interrupted the conversation. The news spread very quickly. In the dormitory, the boys read the news about the brave coward. People in the subway read the news about the fishman. Someone assumed it was a cab driver. In one photo, Chen Guang was photographed from behind. He was running along the beach in his underwear and hat. One headline stated that a true hero is not afraid of humiliation when people's lives are at stake. Bai Fan showed the group headman a couple of photos and mocked the lifeguard. The girl said she didn't have time. She had to make an announcement. Chen Guang heard the conversation and pushed the guy away to change the topic. He asked what the announcement was about. A classmate turned around and angrily shouted to the young man why he was allowing himself to do such a thing. Suddenly it hit him. That guy on the news could very likely be Chen Guang. Bai Fan exclaimed that he remembered everything. He had seen the young man wearing the exact same underwear as in the photo. He ran up to Chen Guang and asked if he was on the news. The guy asked him to stop talking nonsense. Bai Fang showed the photo to the headman and asked if she believed him. The girl replied that she believed him. Pan Jiang said that that hero on the seabed would reach on foot faster than Guan could swim. Bai Fang stood up for his comrade. The boys clashed and were ready to start a fight. Xiong Jingke flew into the classroom, rolling up his sleeves as he went. He recognized that his classmate was in trouble again. Chen Guang put his arm around his friend's shoulders and asked them to calm down. If there was another reprimand, Xiong would be expelled from the university. Jingke could barely contain himself. The young man whispered in his ear that the type should be summoned to a place where there were no cameras. At that time, the headman came running in. She asked that the last year be spent peacefully and without fighting. At this time, the girl placed her palm on Chen Guang's shoulder. Her hand slipped and her shirt ripped, exposing her muscles. When all the classmates saw this, they couldn't believe that the young man had such a developed body. The headman roared and promised to buy a new shirt. The boy replied that he didn't like it anyway. A student came to the middle of the classroom and announced that a girl would be replacing a professor who had fallen ill today. She was immediately bombarded with questions. Everyone wanted to know if the girl was beautiful and if she had a boyfriend. The head teacher said that we should support Zhou's new teacher. The group should participate in the Olympiad. The students shouted that they wouldn't take part. Pan Zhang is already on the basketball team. The door to the auditorium slowly opened. A girl in red high-heeled shoes appeared on the threshold. The white jacket over the red dress was a little tight on the teacher and did not fit the girl's chest. Stopping on the threshold, Zhou crossed her legs coquettishly and asked if the right group was here. The green-eyed teacher walked into the auditorium and waved hello, greeting the group. All the boys immediately fell in love with her. They could not believe that the girl would really teach them. They shouted with glee that they would participate in all the Olympiads and take all the awards. Sun boasted that he was the runner-up last year. He will bring the group to victory. Jo smiled and thanked for the support. She asked for everyone who wanted to sign up to sign up. The headmistress warned that only one person could sign up for each sport. A quarrel for seats immediately started near the table. Chen Guang cheerfully said that everyone had just been against the Olympics, and now they were fighting over a girl for a spot. For Bai Fan, this was the last straw. He jumped out from behind his desk and slammed his hands on it loudly. The young man raised his hand and shouted loudly that he also wanted to enroll. Guan let go of the textbook in surprise. He was sure he was the only one to resist the spell and decided to leave before anyone saw. At that moment, a hand came down on his shoulder. The young man was dazed with surprise. It turned out to be the headman. Shun asked what kind of competition the guy wanted to sign up for. Chen Guang embarrassedly replied that many people had already signed up. The girl said that everyone should participate. Pang Jian caustically said that their classmate was too gentle for rough sports. He didn't need to be forced. Shun turned around and looked at him sadly. She didn't notice the guy's hand rushing towards her opponent. Chen Guang clasped his opponent's hand and angrily shouted that the guy had already gotten him. Grimacing in intense pain, Pang Jian fell to his knees and began to beg for mercy. The head teacher asked to let the young man go. If he gets injured in any way, it will hurt the new teacher. Chen Guang let the whimpering guy go and declared that he wouldn't get off so easily next time. Shun shoved an application form in the young man's face and demanded that he sign up for some competition. Barely seeing the sight of the competition, Chen Guang blushed with unpleasant recent memories. Swimming was on the application form. The young man knew that after the competition everyone would recognize him as a lifeguard. The registration form was filled out in his name. Chen Guang was to go to the 400, 800, and 1,500-meter crawl swimming competitions. The headman felt someone touch her on the shoulder. The girl didn't understand at all who it could be. Turning around, the student saw that it was Pang Jian. She was greatly surprised and asked what he wanted. The young man said with a smile, "The swimming champion from the Faculty of Architecture, Chen Guang, will lose." Shun angrily replied that it didn't matter at all. What mattered was not winning, but participating. The girl got angry and left without even looking at the guy. Pang Jian looked at her thoughtfully. He didn't like the events that had happened today. He dialed a familiar number. The four friends were walking down the hallway. Lin Jingwei reminded Chen Guang that he had called him to go to the pool, but he said he couldn't swim. The young man replied that he just didn't want to go with the pool with the guy. He is straight. Bai looked at him suspiciously. Jingwei exclaimed that it was very vile. He was not at all like Bai Fan. That was the last straw. Biting his lip in anger, the young man asked what he was implying. He shouted to Jingwei that he would kill him. They started a fight. Meanwhile, Chen Guang's phone rang. As it turned out, it was Van. She asked him if he was busy and suggested that he go to the library. Bai Fan ran up and snatched the phone out of his hands. He shouted into the receiver that Wen needed to push on. Guan was flirting with the headman. The young man took the phone from his friend and yelled that he should mind his own business. The guy told Wen that he'd be here soon. All three of them shouted after him that he was just soulless. The girl was surprised to suggest that computer games were more important to him than English. Chen Guang smiled and said, "We need to rest somehow." Wen has no idea how much he has been studying these past few days. The girl glumly stated that the desire to play was written right on his forehead. It had nothing to do with recuperation. The boy continued to beg her. He wanted to have a good rest and play today. Van remembered something that she herself hadn't played in a very long time and suggested that the two of them play together. They came to the computer lab. The auditorium was completely empty. The girl rubbed her hands together with impatience. She really wanted to play quickly. The computers booted up. Their current rankings came up, and Van had a 3,000-point lead. The princess on the screen was being carried after the blue genie. The boy and girl were determined to win. Things went very strange in their game. Chen Guang started losing. Almost every player killed his character. One of the team members angrily shouted that the young man was doing it on purpose. The opponent was winning. The boy looked sadly at the screen. He couldn't understand why he was so unlucky today. After thinking for a bit, he put his microphone on mute so no one could hear him. The statistics were unconvincing. On his personal account in the game session, there were 8 defeats and no wins. Although the score was already almost a loss, Chen Guang was confident that they could still win. Wen laughed and said that he had played very badly. She had 7 victories and 1 death to her credit. In his defense, the young man said that he had not played for a long time and had lost his skills. The girl said that he had no skills at all. Chen Guang worriedly said that he was about to lose and suggested starting over. Wen insisted on playing to the end. Taking a cup of coffee in his hands, the young man complained about his life. Because of his studies, he hadn't been able to play for a couple of months. Chen Guang greedily sipped his coffee as he pondered his strategy. He still hadn't given up hope of getting even. Suddenly, the young man felt that he was no longer in the computer lab. He said indignantly that he was actually playing. Chen Guang found himself once again on the edge of the giant cup. Right in front of him was the sky, his body reflected in the remnants of the liquid. The goddess came down to the young man and stated that he would have lost even earlier if it wasn't for his girlfriend. The guy got very angry about it, and he hit the girl and said that no one had the right to make fun of him in any way. The Lordess became angry and angrily asked how a mere mortal dared to touch her. Chen Guang shouted that he had wanted to beat her up for a long time, and now he had the chance to do so. He was tired of dying and starting all over again. The girl promised that she would be right down and they would have a very serious conversation. Quickly turning around, the goddess swooped down directly at the young man. He realized he wouldn't have time to escape. The impact was very strong. For a few minutes, everything was in a cloud of dust, from which a guy came screaming out. When the dust cleared, Chen Guang saw that the Chinese woman was lying without signs of life. He looked closely at the girl, but she didn't even move. The young man couldn't understand why she wouldn't get up. The guy shouted fearfully that the Lordess can't die so easily. She's a goddess. Chen Guang quickly leaned over and put 2 fingers under the girl's nose, checking her breathing. Unfortunately, she wasn't breathing. In his thoughts, the boy realized that now he would never be able to get out of here in his life. The Lord is angry. He dare not think of himself when she was at death's door. At the same second, the young man felt a strong blow to his face. It was a manifestation of divine power. The guy was thrown back. He was in a lot of pain. The goddess continued to curse him. After the strong blow, Chen Guang inertia did a few somersaults backwards, his legs wrapped behind his head. The Lordess couldn't get enough of everything. She would have gladly strangled the guy, but then she'd be in the glass forever. She said that the young man was lucky. In the past, she would have killed him and 100,000 other spirits for such a thing. Covering her head from the blows, Chen Guang reminded that the girl had passed out from a single blow. Hundreds of thousands of spirits she could not defeat. The goddess slapped him again and screamed that she had spent all her energy moving into the glass, hence why she passed out. The young man recovered from the blow and said that she had made him her own lifeguard, so there was no need to complain. The goddess said she spent a lot of effort to get the guy to this place. They don't have much time. Over the course of the conversation, the goddess stopped being angry with Chen Guang and explained how the glass worked. If the sacred goblet is ready to begin the trial, the subject may enter it at any time regardless of their desire. The world in the glass will depend on the contents of the cup. If there is liquid, the sea will appear. If there is sand, it will go into the desert. The girl said that there were only 9 levels. As soon as the young man looked at the girl's charms, his nose blew heavily again. The goddess didn't immediately realize what was happening to him. When she realized that it was because of her appearance, she became angry. Correcting her dress, the Lordess slapped the guy again for allowing himself too much. After a strong blow, Chen Guang was swept away by the portal. He could hear his female companion screaming after him. The goddess watched the young man with hatred until his body turned into a dot against the background of the portal. The young man found himself in a pink portal that transported him to an unknown area. The goddess said she didn't have the strength this time, so he would have much less water. The Lordess explained that here he would not feel hungry, thirsty, or tired. He could play as much as he wanted. The computer desk stood in the sun. It was accompanied by an ordinary wooden chair. Chen Guang walked over to the computer and stared at the screen, trying to figure out what he was dealing with. He realized that he had recently played this game. He didn't mind going through games as a challenge. The guy knew that games required 3 things: fast reaction, high skill, and understanding of the game mechanics. He knew he had to win faster if he wanted to finish the challenge early. 10 days passed like this. The young man had reached the 60th rank, but he still had to continue playing. 20 days later, a message from the system came again. The increase in rank only infuriated the user. After another month, the system reported the victory. By this time, Chen Guang had stubble and sunken eyes. The young man was so tired that he no longer knew whether to be glad that he was getting out of here. Suddenly, he was surprised to hear the voice of his companion Wen. She was asking for his help. It hit the guy. Only 1 minute had passed since his disappearance in the real world. They also sat in an empty classroom and played online, competing in marksmanship. The student continued to play and sighed heavily. She told the ally that they were going to lose after all. Chen Guang crunched his fingers gloatingly. It was time to test his new skills in the game. The young man's hands ran lightning fast across the keyboard. Their speed would be the envy of any cyber athlete. He started playing so exciting and encouraging that he was just beating everyone. Everyone around him was dying. In a matter of seconds, the guy eliminated 5 opponents. The energy core exploded. Everything in the enemy base was turned to dust. Wen rejoiced like a child. She asked why the guy was faking it, since you could win sooner. Taking off her headphones, the girl wondered how he even managed to do that. The young man got up from the table. He smiled and apologized, needing to go to the bathroom for a while. Van watched the boy thoughtfully. She couldn't understand what was happening to him. The student nervously muttered that the young man had no right to react that way to the star of his campus. Back at the table, the first thing Chen Guang did was to quit the game. He realized that he had had enough for today. Turning off the computer, the student pressed his hand to his forehead, closing his eyes. He felt a terrible headache. The young man was sitting on a chair, almost unconscious. Wen smiled and asked the boy what had just happened to him. She noticed that his face was very pale and stopped smiling. The student asked how he was feeling. Barely sitting on a chair, Chen Guang said that he was very overheated. He felt terrible. Van touched her forehead just in case. It was fine. She wondered how he could have overheated. The young man explained that he was very much worried about the outcome of the game. Apparently this made him feel ill. The girl remembered that such things happen to weak people, and her companion was just that. Grabbing the guy by the scruff of the neck, the student dragged him to the university. On the way, she resented that it was all because of the game. At the last moment, Chen Guang remembered that his mug was left on the table and reached for it. When they reached the parking lot, the guy said he had to work through the night. Tomorrow was the weekend, so he could go to bed later. Wen grabbed the young man by the ear and told him he was crazy. He should be sleeping, not driving. Chen Guang scolded himself for speaking out. He should have brought the girl home first and then get down to business. He knew he only felt bad about the game and realized that if he got behind the wheel, he'd just get his mind off everything. Wen was watching him furtively. It was a shame that the tired young man could not borrow money. The young man didn't really need the money. He drove people around for the sake of mood and relaxation. A new application was received. The customer called via the car ordering app. The driver answered the call. He politely asked if the geolocation was correct. The customer shouted that they were disturbing his sleep. The young man was surprised to think that he had gotten the wrong number. He decided to try again. The order had the same phone number. The phone rang with shouts and demands not to call again. The guy decided to go and see who had called him. The neighborhood was clean and tidy. The neon signs of the modern city harmonized with the old buildings. As he pulled up, he rang again and realized that the sound from the phone sounded like it was echoing around here somewhere. There was a girl hiding behind a pillar, trying her best to hide the sound of her phone. Chen Guang saw her flushed face with sleepy eyes. He thought that she had gotten very drunk. Common sense told me that I couldn't take her in a cab. If anything happened, the driver would be responsible. He was not the only one watching the stranger. 2 drunken men were walking nearby and saw the girl. They came closer to her. One of them asked why no one was looking after her. He leaned closer and started yelling in the girl's ear where her friends had gone. The stranger waved her arms furiously, fighting him off, and indignantly said she wanted to sleep. The man took her hand and said he couldn't afford to leave the girl sleeping on the road. He offered to take her to a motel. Even if she woke up tomorrow, she wouldn't remember anything. Chen Guang jumped out of the car. He realized that the girl might be in trouble. Fearlessly leaping at his opponents, the young man demanded that they go away immediately. Wallowing on the ground after being hit, the man groped his injured cheek and angrily asked who he was. Without a word, the guy ran up to him and sealed the back of his head into the pavement. Lun, who had started to rise, also felt the back of his head on the hard surface. Chen Guang hit him in the face at the same time. Trembling with fear, the man called him a friend and offered to discuss things normally. The young man hit him again and declared that he would finish off such friends if he had any. He then said that men are acting like real scoundrels and it's not right or nice at all. Chen Guang inquired about the girl's well-being and helped her stand up. Leaning on his shoulder, the stranger reached the cab. The guy decided to break the principles and take the girl after all. Here she will definitely be lost. 2 battered friends said he tricked them and just wanted to take the girl for himself. Chen Guang replied for those to get out of here while they were still in one piece. He explained that the girl had called a cab. The navigator told him to turn right at a traffic light, and the driver made a quick maneuver. It made the girl throw up right in the car. The young man cursed himself. He knew it beforehand. He grudgingly asked the stranger how she was feeling and if she was better. Without dignifying him with an answer, the beauty simply laid back in the back seat and snored sweetly. The guy got even more pissed off. Not only did he have to wash the car, he had to take care of the passenger. The navigator announced the arrival at the destination. Chen Guang was very happy that he had brought the client. He scrutinized the street and figured out how far it would be for the girl to get to her house. Just in front of the car was a 24-hour pharmacy. Chen Guang went there and bought some medicine. The young man decided to fulfill his duty to the end and escort the girl. Today he was kind. A girl asked why the guy was looking at her with disdain. The guy replied that she had thrown up in his car. Chen Guang put the water bottle to her mouth. The girl greedily gulped it down. The young man asked for some medicine for nausea. The guy said she was very lucky to have met just such a wonderful man like him. After getting out of the car, Chen Guang sneezed. He looked at his phone and was surprised to realize that it was already 3 in the morning. After assessing the girl's condition, the young man realized that he would have to sleep in the car tonight. He carefully parked the cab near the sidewalk in the shade of the trees and turned off the engine. At that moment, the stranger woke up. The screams coming from the car almost made a passerby's heart stop. Not understanding the situation, she started yelling and attacking the guy, accusing him of attempted assault. Trying to fight back, Chen Guang wailed that she had lost her mind altogether. He didn't understand why she started acting like this. The young man grabbed her wrist with both hands so she couldn't attack him anymore. The customer became even more frightened and demanded to be let go or she would call the police. Upon seeing the surveillance camera, the stranger said he would call the police right away. He would answer for everything. Chen Guang told her how it was. She ordered a cab and dirtied it. After that, the girl still insults the driver. The girl stated that she would get checked out by a doctor. If something happened, he would rot in jail and regret it for the rest of his life. The young man smiled and offered to memorize his face well, and remembered to take a picture of his license plates on the way. The girl took a picture of the cab. The guy said he was a third-year student at Wujing University. He would wait for the police. Chen Guang shouted that his conscience was clear, so the client could go write a statement. He will be waiting for it. The young man suggested looking up the dialing history of the phone numbers at home. She would see that he was right. As the guy drove away, he yelled to her that she was just lucky to have met him yesterday. There was some packaging left on the road. The girl decided to move closer and see what the nasty type had dropped along the way. To her surprise, the red box contained nausea medicine. It sobered the girl immediately. For the first time that evening, the thought crossed her mind that she might have made a mistake and done the wrong thing. Seeing the pills, the passenger thought seriously. That guy could be a really good person. She decided to see if she had really called a cab. Opening the phone, the girl realized that the guy wasn't lying. After comparing the numbers on the photo and on the cab she had called, she was finally convinced that she had offended an innocent man. The client almost burned with shame. The young man was indeed a cab driver, and she had attacked him with accusations. She didn't know what to do now. The driver had already left and now clearly hated her for her behavior. Chen Guang really didn't want to stay here too long. He had done his job, and the client would take it from there. The young man saw a familiar number on the phone screen. He immediately realized that it was the number of the drunken passenger. The guy was so angry that he decided not to pick up the phone. Her apology was no use now. The driver told himself that he was too touchy and petty. Better listen to the radio. When he got home, he saw the light under the door and was surprised that his neighbors were still awake. Chen Guang cautiously opened the door and walked into the room. What he saw scared him a little. On a clothesline hung his underwear. Next to it on a clothespin hung a photo of a lifeguard in the same underwear. There was absolutely nowhere to go. He realized that the roommates knew the name of the rescuer very well. The boy almost screamed in terror. Now the whole university would tease him. He would not get a pass. As soon as Chen Guang entered the room, Xiang opened the door with a smirk and ran in trailing behind him. Lin Jingwei smiled and clapped his friend on the shoulder. He stated that it was useless to deny. Baifeng said that it was the young man's own fault, hanging the laundry out to dry. Now all he has to do is confess. Shun gloatingly shouted that they should just match the heel points of their neighbor and the guy in the photo. Chen Guang snatched his underwear from the guy's hands and irritatedly said that they had made such a big fuss over one picture. The young man confessed to his friends that he was exactly this knight in shorts and irritably tossed the underwear on the bed. Shun almost cried with resentment. He knew that the lifeguard had kissed those two beauties and asked him to tell him about it. Jingwei fell to his knees and shouted that Chen Guang was now his idol. He saw Jin Shiwei and Zhang Yage live and kiss them. Peeling half a peel from a banana, one of the guys pretended it was a microphone. The journalist was supposedly interviewing a lifeguard. The guy bit off a banana that was instead of a microphone and demanded that the neighbors settle down at last. At this point, someone in the hallway was banging on the door and yelling that it was nighttime. They were disturbing people's sleep. Chen Guang conspiratorially pressed his index finger to his lips and urged his friends to be quiet. He asked me not to tell anyone that he was the hero. The fans of those actresses will not let him get away with it. All three raised their hands with middle and index fingers up and solemnly swore that they would remain silent. In the morning, Chen Guang sat in the university canteen and ate vermicelli with relish. He took out his phone and transferred 40,000 yuan to his father, and wrote that it was for his mother's medicine. At that time, his female classmates along with the head girl passed by his table. The girl was told that her Chen Guang was sitting by himself. She better not miss the chance. There are many people willing to take the seat next to him. Shun immediately blushed and angrily exclaimed that there was nothing at all between them. One girl laughed, while the other girl herself pushed the embarrassed beauty closer to the guy's table. The headman approached with a tray and asked the young man why he was here alone and where his friends were. Chen Guang said hello and said that those three were still sleeping. He asked what sport she had chosen for herself. The girl sat down next to me and replied that she would participate in the short distance run. 100 meters. She used to do gymnastics. The young man stated that he now realized why the headman had such a cool figure. He remembered that Wen also participates as a runner. Shun blushed even more and said that her friends must have already taken their food. She should go to them. Burning with embarrassment, the girl wished the boy good luck in his swim. He waved goodbye. Panjiang followed their conversation with hatred. He called Dong and asked about the participants of the crawl swimming competition. The subscriber promised that their varsity team would take all 3 prizes and reminded them to pay up. At the opening of the Olympics, the steward asked for a round of applause for students who participate as a whole group. Chen Guang hid behind a column. The headmistress and her friends started to look at him very carefully. The girlfriends actually sat on the benches and worried about the young man's performance. Pan Jiang told the headman that their group's basketball team had just won. It would be good to congratulate them. When Chen Guang saw Pan Jian, he wondered why that type had even come to the pool. Seeing the unfriendly look, the basketball player quickly looked away, pretending not to see him. One by one, the swimmers came out of the service room. One of them looked at the young man suspiciously. Chen Guang felt someone looking at him and faintly turned his head. At that moment, a voice from the loudspeaker sounded and demanded that we take our starting positions. The headman said that she understood why Pang Jian had bet on Guang losing. He had bet the best swimmers against him. The guy said he had nothing to do with it. The distribution of groups is decided by lot. It's just a coincidence. Shun's neighbor hugged her arm. The girl said that Chen Guang has a muscular body. He should win. The young man listened to his girlfriends glumly. He thought gloatingly that now their precious Guan would lose the swim. Everyone was already standing at the starting line, warming up for the big event. The coach asked Dong Tao to explain why their team was sailing on the same day. Chen Guang looked around with interest. The young man replied with a smile that this was the way the lot fell. They promised not to dishonor the honor of the university's varsity team. The coach agreed with the guy's arguments and asked him to show at this Olympics everything he can do. All 3 of them laughed. They promised to show the boy the difference between an amateur and a professional. When Chen Guang heard this, he felt amused. He couldn't help himself and snorted contemptuously. This made the athletes very angry. Dong Tao angrily asked why he was laughing. The young man replied that they made him laugh. After a few seconds, the coach called for everyone to get ready. 8 swimmers took the starting position. Putting his hand up, the man fired the starter's pistol. The swimming competition began. Immediately after the shot, the athletes synchronously entered the water. They had done this many times before. Unfortunately, Chen Guang entered the water incorrectly and dived deeper than his competitors. While there was a huge splash of water at the 4th podium, all the other competitors were already racing in a straight line. The young man blushed with shame. He had botched his jump, and now his rivals had a clear advantage. All the spectators who were cheering for him were just desperate. They realized it was a loss. Everyone started yelling that he was so strong in appearance, but in fact he lost even at the very beginning. Wen was also here. She thought that with such a body, Chen Guang would win. It was a shame to see such a start. Whistling a tune, Pang Jian reminded the headman that she had promised to invite him to dinner if he won the argument. Not paying attention to his words, Shun shouted for Chen Guang to immediately rush forward. She shouted so loudly that Van involuntarily noticed the name of her acquaintance. The girl remembered that Bai was yelling into the tube about some hottie hitting on a young man. During the swim, the young man heard cheering shouts. Shun couldn't stop encouraging him. At that moment, Chen Guang wanted to hide deeper. He was already uncomfortable swimming in his tight swimming trunks. Besides, the guy realized that he was very far behind. There was no chance of winning at all. The first 3 had only a short distance to sail, and the young man was now at the very tail. Suddenly, Chen Guang had a single thought. He couldn't resist smiling. In reality, the situation looked quite different. None of his opponents had a chance to win. Diving down, the young man accelerated and began to swim at the speed of a torpedo. No one could stop him now. A few seconds passed and the situation changed. Chen Guang began to catch up with his opponents. No matter how fast they swam, the young man was rapidly catching up with them. It was obvious that he could be in the top 3. The water seemed to part before him. He glided across the surface like a glider, overtaking the others. Pang Jian couldn't believe his eyes. His friends had a strong advantage at the start, but now everything had changed. With quick rows, Chen Guang was catching up with the members of the university team. He knew he would win the Olympics. Van couldn't believe her eyes. She knew that not so long ago the boy couldn't swim. His superiority was actually explained simply. After the unsuccessful diving, the young man remembered his journey. Once he was chased for many kilometers by sea monsters, but he was able to escape them. Imagining that he was being chased by an underwater giant, Chen Guang himself almost couldn't believe it and picked up a lot of speed. None of the guys could understand how the young man was able to outrun them, because he didn't even manage to enter the water properly. Dong Tao noticed with the corner of his eye that this guy on the 4th lane was starting to catch up to him. He encouraged himself that the young man wouldn't make it to the end of the competition. Still, it was worth pushing on. Dong Tao started to speed up. but the coach asked why he was doing that. He shouted that the young man would lose his strength by the end of the competition. The intrigue was growing. All the spectators saw that Chen Guang was gradually taking away centimeter by centimeter from the leader. Shun didn't spare her voice and kept shouting that the young man would win. Pang Jian became angry. Wen looked at the swimmer in love. She thought that Chen Guang was swimming like some kind of sea monster. The junior stormed to the finish line. He was pleased with himself and the win over the university team. Dong Tao almost shouted in annoyance. Chen Guang declared that he was swimming too slowly. Meanwhile, a man approached Van and placed his hand on her shoulder imperiously. The girl's uncle reminded her that this guy wasn't as easy as he seemed at first sight. He was a guy to watch out for. Wen said she knew him very well. She recalled that she had asked to know about the case of Chen Guang's poisoning. The man frowned and reluctantly told me that he had sent people to investigate the case. It really wasn't clean. The girl asked what information he had managed to get. Every little detail was important. Turns out the guy's blood tests were gone. In addition, there were no symptoms of poisoning in the tests of the others. The girl could not understand what had happened. The uncle apologized that he could not find out anything. All traces of poisoning had disappeared. Van thanked her uncle for his efforts. She realized that she had to be more careful with this. The man jumped on the windowsill and asked her to deal with it herself. He was tired of keeping all her secrets. At that moment, a thought struck the girl, but she immediately discarded it. Chen Guang couldn't have anything to do with this. She decided to question the young man thoroughly this time. She would wonder how he even dared to lie. Chen Guang was leading the competition at that moment. The stopwatch recorded 3 minutes and 55 seconds. When Dong Tao tiredly reached the finish line, the young man had already rested and was looking at him with a smile. He said dismissively that this was a decent result for a professional and master swimmer. Dong Tao was not satisfied. He broke his record, but he still lost to a guy and pulled a muscle from working hard. But Guan was happy that he could win. He didn't see his coach waiting for him at the pool stairs. The head swimming coach Qin Yuanhua invited the young man to join their team. Chen Guang was very surprised by this. No one had offered him to play in the national team before. He thought he could compete in the World Olympics and even become a world champion. The young man asked if he could really become a world champion. The man was surprised at his audacity. The coach said he has good speed and basic skills. In 3 years, the young man will be able to perform. Chen Guang said in surprise, "This is the year of the Olympiad. There is no reason to wait 3 years." The man explained that he needed better indicators for the Olympics. The young man decided that it would be better to become an actor. He thanked the coach for the offer and said that swimming was just a hobby for him, better to turn to other swimmers. Dong Tao was just walking towards the guy. Because of his injury, he was supported by 2 companions. The mere sight of his opponent made him angry. He could not understand how he had lost in the swim to this brat. Chen Guang smiled and asked why he was so displeased. He assumed that Dong Tao wanted to fight him. The young man shouted angrily that they would meet again. He remembered that he had ruined his whole life for 6,000. Without hiding satisfaction, the guy watched the trio of athletes who would no longer be able to compete with him. Pang Jian almost cried out in frustration. All his plans to win over the headman had collapsed. Shun on the bench cheerfully told Pang Jiang that one should have a losing attitude. He should apologize to the young man. The guy replied that he would do it now. Unfortunately, Dong Tao could no longer be counted on. Chen Guang became very popular during this time. Many girls themselves came up to him and asked for his phone number. At this moment, Shun and Pang Jiang walked up to him. The girl waved happily to her friend from afar. Chen Guang snidely asked how a famous basketball player found the time to come to his pathetic swimming qualifier. Pang Jiang could barely tolerate the boy's antics. He promised himself that he would destroy the young man later. He couldn't explode now. The young man congratulated Guan on his victory. He recognized that the boy would be the champion this year. Chen Guang was very surprised and asked what had happened to him, whether he had accidentally hit his head. Pan Jiang couldn't stand it and snapped. He shouted that he was trying to mend their relationship and that the young man was just bullying him. The boy didn't believe him. He knew there was a catch, but he decided to play along with his opponent. At that moment, the swimming coach caught up with him. The young man realized that he had to run away from the annoying man. The coach yelled out that he had a decent offer. Running away, the guy replied that he didn't want to get himself injured. Pan Jiang stated that he kept his word. He lost the argument and admitted it. Shun expressed her hope that there would be no quarrel now. The young man replied that he would have apologized to him anyway. He was sorry for something else entirely. The girl turned to him with interest. He confessed that he had made a reservation at a restaurant, but they don't refund prepayments there. Shun asked why he had to spend so much money. Today, the image of the goddess was different. She was slyly depicting the transmission of an air kiss. While preparing for the exams, Chen Guang thought about her. If she came out of the mug, he would turn into a prince and become unaffordable to her. Suddenly, the phone rang. The young man reluctantly reached for it. He had just started studying. Shun's neighbor said that something had happened to the girl. She had gone out to dinner with Pang Jian and still hadn't returned home. The young man asked why the caller was calling him. The caller angrily replied that he himself had asked to look after the headman. Chen Guang realized that Pang Jiang had invited the girl to dinner for a reason. Shun might be in danger. The young man was also unable to reach the headman. This made him very wary. Chen Guang quickly got dressed and ran down the stairs with the cup. He knew that there would be some trouble from this guy. At the foot of the stairs stood 3 stout guys. They were smoking and laughing. The young man rejoiced. Pang Jiang's guys should definitely know where he was now and what he was doing. He jumped over the railing in one fell swoop. The young men looked at him in surprise. After landing on the floor, Chen Guang said that he had a very serious conversation with them. He asked where Pang Jiang was now. The leader asked indignantly why the young man was preventing them from passing. Taking a cigarette out of his mouth, the man ordered an attack on the boy. All 3 of them pounced on the young man. Chen Guang kicked the ringleader in the face and declared that he would speak to them as he wished. All 3 of them attacked with redoubled vigor. Now they had a just cause for revenge. When they wanted to hit the guy, the young man simply dodged the attack and ducked under his opponents. Chen Guang grabbed the 2 opponents' faces so hard that they couldn't get free. The young man spread his hands apart and pushed his enemies' foreheads together. They fell down at once. The ringleader stood there trembling with fear. The young man asked where Pang Jian was now. He was told that the boss was in a restaurant. Chen Guang offered to pray that the girl would be okay, or else they would both be finished. Tossing the useless servant to the floor, the young man snorted contemptuously. He had no time to amuse himself with them. The man realized that he needed to warn his boss that Chen Guang was heading to their restaurant. Unfortunately, there was no communication with Pang Jian. The man couldn't get through to the chief. Pang Jian at this time was just rejoicing over his purchase, blocking the telephone network. No one could interfere with them. He suggested that Shun try some special appetizers to improve her appetite. The girl thanked him. When she started to eat, she picked up her phone. She saw that the network was gone. She decided that she would eat and go home. Suddenly, Shun started to feel dizzy. Pang Jian lustfully licked his lips. He knew what was happening to her. He waved the girl in front of his eyes and innocently asked what had happened to her. Holding her head, the head woman replied that she was very tired and needed to go home. Pang Jian grabbed her waist and said that there was still plenty of food left. The girl exclaimed that she would scream. The young man admitted that he had ordered a soundproofed room. He laid the headman down on the pillows and suggested that he sleep for a while. Pang Jiang looked at the sleepy girl with a smile and told himself that the headman had herself to blame. After all, she was always sticking it to this Chen Guang. He even apologized to the guy, but Shun still rejected him. At this moment, Chen Guang himself burst into the room. He angrily kicked the door with his foot. The young man hissed that he would never have thought that Pang Jiang could stoop to such a thing. He hit his rival and told him to take his hands off the girl and not to dare touch her. Sitting on the floor, Pang Jian fearfully shouted that he had not done anything to the headman. She had just fallen asleep. Chen Guang approached the girl and tried to wake her up to take her home. Pang Jiang shouted that now he couldn't let the 2 of them leave the restaurant in peace and tried to punch the guy. The young man dodged and launched a lightning-fast counterattack. Pang Jiang didn't expect it and missed a punch. Chen Guang hit him once more and shouted that he would make him wash his blood away. Without giving him a break, the young man struck again and reminded him that Pang Jiang had drugged a classmate. The young man was lying on the floor and barely had time to block the guy's punches. He didn't understand where Chen Guang had learned how to fight. Pang Jiang grabbed the empty wine bottle and fiercely shouted that he would avenge everything now. He lunged at the young man, swinging the bottle at him. His bloody mouth was missing several teeth. Chen Guang irritably shouted that you couldn't even fight with the likes of him. He punched his opponent in the groin. Pang Jiang groaned and sank to his knees. His eyes began to water from the infernal pain. Because of the unbearable pain, the young man let the bottle out of his hands. It shattered. At that moment, a waitress ran into the room. She demanded that the fight stop or the restaurant would call the police. Chen Guang said that the girl was slipped sleeping pills in their restaurant, so they would also be responsible. At that moment, excited classmates ran into the room and asked what had happened. The young man told them the truth and asked them to take Shun to the hospital immediately. The girl was lifted up and led towards the exit. Baifeng wondered why the young man didn't go himself. Chen Guang said he would stay put. The restaurant called the police, and he has to tell them what happened. Pang Jiang groaned and said that he understood everything. He was in a lot of pain and asked to call an ambulance. The young man refused to help. The boy was brought to the police station for questioning. Wu Tung sat at the table and asked questions. She glumly asked why Chen Guang had violated the rules of behavior and beat up the young man. The young man surprisingly replied that Pang Jiang had slipped sleeping pills to his classmate and wanted to bully her. Wu Tung got up from the table and shouted that legally he had no right to hit him. She said that it was clear to everyone. At this moment, Chen Guang was distracted and looked at the girl's chest as she was right in front of him. He couldn't take his eyes off her for a few seconds and recognized that for a police officer, she was even okay. Wu Tong shouted even more. She said that Pang Jiang now had a big health problem. Her partner suggested she get some rest. He would interrogate the guy himself and she would draw up a protocol. Chen Guang told the officer that he was actually only defending himself. Their victim wanted to break a bottle on his head. The officer sat down at the table and said he hoped to cooperate. The young man said that he had already said everything. They had better take the girl's tests. That same night, hot on the trail, Wu Tong came to the hospital to verify the guy's words. She asked the pensive Tang Ying if that girl had really been spiked with sleeping pills. The girl asked for the question to be repeated. She hesitated and listened to it. The officer pinched her cheek and reminded her that there was a police investigation involved. Tang Ying said they found barbiturates in her system. That guy gave the girl sleeping pills and filed a report on the person who rescued her. Wu Tong replied that this did not absolve Chen Guang of his guilt. He maimed his classmate and should be held accountable. The woman walked into Wu Tong's house without knocking and asked if the guy who almost killed their boy had been arrested. The policewoman said that the man has been arrested, but Pang Jian is not really a victim. He gave the student sleeping pills. This made the woman angry. She shouted that the officer was making it all up and that she had been hired as an acquaintance. Wu Tong showed the test report and said she should not be insulted and told how to investigate. The boy's mother screamed that that sly wench had poisoned herself with pills. She wanted to ruin Zhang. At this time, Bai Fan and Xiang appeared in the doorway with a bag in their hands. The young man asked if the food from the table was proof. The girl smiled. He took the matter seriously. Bai Fan replied that Chen Guang is like a brother to them. They know what happened. After a few minutes, the headman came in as well. The girl exclaimed that Chen Guang had done nothing illegal. Shun said that the young man only hit Pang Jiang because she herself was in danger. The guest got angry and took a swing at the girl. She said she would kill her for her boy. Fortunately, she didn't have time to hit the girl. The officer caught her wrist in time. The woman realized she had overreacted and explained that she was just a bit agitated. She stated that the only victim here is her son. She has already called a lawyer and all those responsible will be punished. The investigator said that Xiao Xun could go rest and gain strength. They've already figured it out. The headman frowned and said that she would not return to the hospital until they released Chen Guang. At that time, the young man was sitting in a private room without a telephone. He hoped that he would pass the test during his imprisonment. Wu Tong came to him and told him that the test confirmed his version. In addition, the victim was willing to stand up for him. The young man shouted angrily that they should arrest Pan Jiang. The girl explained that the guilt had not yet been fully proven. Chen Guang accepted that he beat up the guy. He is ready to cover all the costs of his treatment. Wu Tong smirked gloatingly and said that he was detained for 15 days. The young man couldn't believe that for 15 whole days he would be without a phone or anything at all. The goddess said caustically that Chen Guang was in trouble again. She waited for the guy to start begging her for help. The young man stated that this was not a good time for testing at all. He was not going anywhere. She laughed and said that nothing depends on him. It was up to the glass to decide when to start the trial. Furthermore, the appearance of the goddess meant that it was time for a new challenge. Chen Guang shouted and held his head. Wu Tong saw that the young man kept slapping his hands on the table and walked over to him. The officer said he shouldn't worry so much. He wouldn't be tortured. The police will make arrangements with the university. Seeing that the guy was crying, she stated that she had already made a concession. There was nothing to cry about. Chen Guang stated that she did not understand. At this time in his mind, the young man met the goddess somewhere in the heavens on a mirrored surface. Learned by bitter experience, the overlady now covered her charms from the eyes of others. The guy yelled that the girl was just playing with him. If she calls herself a goddess, she should act like one. The lordess laughed and said she could fulfill his request. Now she would show the real goddess. The Chinese woman has changed. She became several times taller. Bright sources of light emanated from her eyes. The girl frowned and asked menacingly if the guy now doubted that she was the real goddess. Chen Guang fell to his knees and said now he had no doubts. A pitiful mortal worshipping her greatness. The goddess said she was afraid to show him her true appearance. She allows herself to be called the glass goddess. The young man asked how the goddess was able to get out of the glass if he hadn't recovered all his powers yet. Turns out it was because of his tantrums. She thought the young man was in danger. But it was only 15 days. Chen Guang shouted that he was immortal, so 15 days was important. The goddess decided to help the guy, although she was gathering her strength for a completely different purpose. She dreamed of going online. The young man wondered how the overlady would manage to get him released. She wouldn't be able to kill the investigator for that after all. He closed his eyes, dreaming of a normal world. All he could do was hope that everything would work out. When Chen Guang opened his eyes, he realized that he was in the real world again in the same cell. It seemed that Wu Tong was even pleased that the guy had woken up. The girl looked at him worriedly. The officer reluctantly admitted that Chen Guang had fainted, so they decided to let him go. The young man couldn't believe his luck and asked again if he could really leave the station. Wu Tong slammed her fist on the table and said that he needed to hurry up or she might change her mind. The officer didn't hold back and shouted for the young man to leave quickly. He was glad that the goddess was able to free him. Wu Tong herself regretted letting the guy out. The girl thought that she should have taught him a lesson, but she felt very strange. Not far from the police station, Chen Guang met Shun. The girl stood pensively against the wall of the building. She asked in surprise how the young man had managed to get out of the station. The officer flatly refused to let him out. The guy replied that he pleaded guilty and paid the fine. Together with the treatment, it will cost 10,000 yuan. During the conversation, Shun noticed that her interlocutor was holding the very cup he never parted with. She timidly inquired if she could look at the mug the guy always carries with him. Barely taking the metal mug in her hands, the girl became very embarrassed and blushed like a boiled cancer. The headman tossed the cup back to the young man and ran away, citing urgent business. Chen Guang didn't realize what had happened. It was just an ordinary mug, nothing to blush about. He turned the mug with the image of the goddess on it and realized everything. Even to him it seemed incredible. She was wearing the same beautiful Chinese woman, only now instead of a dress she was wearing a red swimsuit. The young man shouted angrily that with such jokes the girl would soon drive him to his grave. He asked where her dress had gone. Folding her arms across her chest, the goddess said she spent a lot of energy helping with the police. She's not dressed like that for him. The girl added that she needed to rest and build up her energy. Next time she will appear before the trials. Seeing the overlady waving goodbye, the guy anxiously asked her to return. The girl didn't react, so Chen Guang angrily stabbed her image with his fingers. There was a terrible rumble outside the door of his dorm room. The young man was very surprised. Chen Guang was sure that his neighbors were busily discussing a plan to release him and wanted to express his gratitude. Unfortunately, no one was interested in his identity. The guys were passionately playing online, loudly discussing tactics. It made him very angry. He couldn't believe that his three friends had forgotten him so easily. Baifeng saw him and said as if nothing had happened, that tomorrow was the Olympics, so the lights wouldn't be turned off, so we could still play. Chen Guang got angry and shouted that all three of them were just shameless. He wouldn't play with them. Walking past Baifeng's computer, the young man looked at his screen and sighed enviously. He saw how passionately his neighbors played online, disconnected from reality, and changed his mind. Blushing with anger at himself, the young man opened his laptop and announced that he would connect to the next gaming session. The running competition started on Wednesday. The guy couldn't wear his china cup in full view of everyone and bought a case with kitties on it. Taking a sip of some stadium liquid from a cup, Chen Guang remembered that the store only had pink covers. Baifeng was constantly teasing the owner of the pouch, so his mouth was covered with a band-aid. Chen Guang glumly promised that he would also tape up his nose if the guy didn't stop laughing. Baifeng got angry. This was already cruel. The young man looked down intently. The female jogging contestants lined up on the treadmills. Wei was among them. Her athletically built figure gave no chance for anyone to win. Unfortunately, Shun was also here. Baifeng peeled off the band-aid and told the guy that he understood. The young man wished those two would participate in different groups. Chen Guang declared that it was none of his business. He did not allow the thought that both girls were in love with him. The coach asked all the contestants to get ready. Taking a low start, Wen furtively looked at her opponent with curiosity. Firing upward from the starter's pistol, the coach yelled that the running events had begun. At first, Chen Guang was sure that Wen would win. She was rapidly increasing the distance, surging ahead. For Van's trained body, there was nothing difficult about this run. She kept the right pace. Shun was running second and got tired rather quickly, trying to catch up with her strong opponent. The young man knew that Wen would show his usual level and win the Olympics. He was worried that Shun might not be able to stand it and fall down. That's what happened. Wen ran to the finish line first. Shun was a little behind. Suddenly, the head woman tripped and bruised herself painfully, falling to her knees and elbow. The girl cried out in pain. Wen immediately ran over to her and touched her rival's shoulder. She asked her how Shun was feeling. Despite the intense pain, the girl straightened up and pushed the unsuspecting rival away. A classmate helped Shun up and hugged her. Wen exclaimed that it was impolite. The girls stared at each other. Their eyes spewed lightning bolts. Each of them was defending her boyfriend. Chen Guang saw from afar that girlfriend Shun was angrily proving something to Wen and shaking her fists. He realized that the girls were jealous of each other and decided to get out of here before they both got him themselves. Baifeng wondered why he wouldn't approach the headman. After all, she had fallen and hit herself hard. The young man referred to urgent business and asked to find out from the headmistress what Van had told her. The boy smiled understandingly. He understood his friend's concern and assured him that he would do the right thing. A short while later, Chen Guang was already in the parking lot by his red cab. Right now, he had to work hard to quickly give the money for Peng Jiang's treatment. Suddenly, a call came from Officer Wu Tong. The young man sighed. This was to be expected. The guy replied that he was very busy helping with experiments. The girl stated that she had paid the fine for him and would now come to the university. Chen Guang promised to pay back the money and said that there was a bad connection in the cave. In fact, he had no intention of rushing to repay the debt. The second round of the swimming competition began at the university. The young man swiftly raced forward. Just like in the first round, the guy won the swim by a wide margin and slammed the side of the pool victoriously. This time he had a large support group. Everyone chanted his nickname Torpedo Guan. As he threw on his jacket, the young man was embarrassed to think that he had been given a strange nickname. They could have come up with a better one. The headmistress congratulated him on his victory. She said that she had been rooting for him for a reason. Chen Guang asked how she was feeling after her injury. Shun frowned and said that she was fine. The guy thought she was acting a little too weird and figured that surely Van must have said something to her. The coach appeared on the horizon again. As soon as he heard his voice, the young man realized it was time to run away. He quickly said goodbye to the girl and tried his best to get away from the annoying man. The headmistress didn't know how to explain to Chen Guang everything that had happened that morning between her and her rival. In the meantime, the young man decided to find out. He leaned back against his cab and called Wen. The boy asked bluntly what she had said to his headman this morning. He still hoped that nothing special had happened. The girl replied that she had told Shun about Guan talking about her a lot. The young man got angry. Now the headman is acting strange. Wen laughed and reminded that Chen Guang hadn't dated anyone for 3 years. She decided to help him out. The girl added that instead of English, he only plays games and participates in competitions and even got into the station. When he finished talking, the young man opened the car door. He wondered how Wen had found out about his arrest. In any case, there was no need to worry about English. He dreamed of the day when Van would fulfill his promise. It was late evening. Wutong had long since arrived at the university. No cave was here. She decided to wait for the guy here. There were various suspicious individuals loitering near the university. Their scowling faces did not inspire confidence. The girl looked back suspiciously at a large guy walking down the street with a bat on his shoulder. Wutong decided that she had nothing to fear. If they set something up, it would only take one call, and her partner would be here. At this time, Chen Guang was joyfully driving through the city. He had a great day today, and there were many orders. Suddenly, a crowd of people unfamiliar to the boy came out on the road. They blocked the young man's way. Chen Guang saw a strange movement with the corner of his eye. He had a feeling that this encounter was not a coincidence. A large man in a light brown t-shirt took a brick in his hand and swung it around. It wasn't until the man threw a heavy object at the car that Young belatedly realized it was a brick. The windshield cracked and shattered. Chen Guang ducked down to dodge the shards. The boy's patience was breaking. He opened the car door and stepped out, surveying the crowd of hostiles. Rolling up his sleeves, the young man slowly walked towards his opponents, intending to smash everyone into the wall. But after a moment, he changed his wish. Now Chen Guang wished that the police would show up here. Wutong did show up just in time. She demanded that the lawlessness be stopped immediately. The girl shouted indignantly that they had the nerve to vandalize in front of her. Chen Guang reproached himself for his rash desire. Wutong had appeared at a bad time. He wouldn't be able to beat anyone with her. The man in the tank top smiled and promised to take care of her figure when he dealt with that guy. The other guy told her to get out of here and not to be a hero. It's not like she's on the police force, so there's no reason to get involved. Wutong shielded the young man with herself. She warned that there would be big trouble if they attacked the boy. Chen Guang stood there and thought that she was protecting him like a small child. He is not that weak. The ringleader shouted that the guys would deal with Chen Guang and he would take the girl on. The young man pulled out a telescopic baton and vowed to smash his face as payment for the broken glass. Wutong rejoiced and snatched the baton out of his hands. The surprised guy didn't even have time to say a word. A red-haired guy with a huge cleaver and a young man with a metal bat ran forward with shrieks. With one swing of her club, the girl stopped the first enemy. He fell down, choking on blood, and let go of the cleaver. The second one didn't fare much better. Wutong kicked him in the stomach. The guy fell down, dropping the aluminum bat. Chen Guang was happy to help and added a fist to the first attacker's face. The result was to his liking. The girl discreetly nudged him with her back and told him to get away. She could handle herself here. This fight only irritated Wutong. She laughed and asked her enemies to come closer. They don't know how to fight. Chen Guang resentfully said that she took the baton and was satisfied with it. The girl promised that she would make them pay for the car repair. Meanwhile, another brave man flew to the pavement with a groan, bumping into Wutong's knee. After a few seconds, only 4 enemies remained on their feet. They glumly assessed their opponents. Trying to determine who was more dangerous, the man in the tank top rushed to the attack, swinging his nunchaku above his head. Wutong, lightning fast, blocked the baton strike and praised the guy for a good attempt. Chen Guang shouted goodbye to the girl that he didn't have health insurance, so he had to run away. 3 other guys got in the young man's way. The man in dark glasses asked where he was going to run to. The two boys happily lunged at the guy. He seemed too easy a target. Chen Guang lavished a slap on everyone's face and said that it was too presumptuous. He shouted angrily that he was not easy to beat up, and jumped and hit the third guy. His glasses came off. The young man grinned gloatingly. It was a waste of time for those guys to stop his car. They'd each get what they deserved. The jersey-clad ringleader and his deputy were now sitting fearfully on the ground with their backs pressed against each other in fear. Wiping his tears, the guy realized that they were screwed. Panjan had only given 10,000 for this guy. He shouted to the boss that it was time to run away before they were finished. Chen Guang stated that they weren't going anywhere. He showed both guys his cell phone, on the screen of which was dialing the police station. Several police crews arrived on the scene within minutes, announcing the silence with the roar of sirens. When he saw his partner in handcuffs, the young man turned pale. He realized that now they were all dead. Wu Tong watched as the two most dangerous guys were escorted to the police car. The girl turned to Chen Guang and held out her palm. She stated that she had saved him from the bandits. Now was the time to return the money. The young man immediately moved his hand away and innocently asked what he had to return. Wu Tong threatened him with her fist and shouted at him. He knows exactly what he's talking about. The guy frightenedly said he was joking. He had no cash, only money on his bank card. The girl smiled gloatingly and pulled a payment terminal out of her pocket. Chen Guang almost cried. He had to give up his recent earnings. The girl promised that she would return the money to repair the glass. The young man glumly said that the bandits were sent to him by Panjang. Wu Tong asked what made him think that. The guy exclaimed that you don't have to take him for a fool. He's at university and he's not stupid. The officer decided to investigate 2 cases at once. She promised that Panjang's family would not bother him again. He thanked her and said he would wait for news. Wu Tong asked why he was working as a cab driver. Chen Guang said that his mother needed expensive medicine. The officer offered to repay the debt later. The girl felt ashamed of her prejudice against him. She did not suspect that the guy had such problems in his family. Chen Guang thanked the offer and said that he would rather work harder. He didn't understand why she was suddenly so nice to him. Wu Tong embarrassedly said that it was time for her to leave. She opened the door of one of the carriages and got into the car. After turning off their flashers, the police cars drove away from the scene. The girl's partner smiled and assumed that Chen Guang really liked her. The girl turned aside and said that it wasn't like that. She was going to give him a double whammy today. If it wasn't for the bandits, she would have whacked him. The man laughed, her plans thwarted by Panjang. Wu Tong had an epiphany. It was a good idea. It was the victim she would unleash all her anger on. The next morning, she called Chen Guang. It was still very early for him. He didn't take the call. In a sleepy voice, the young man replied that he didn't want to talk to anyone. Wu Tong shouted for him to come downstairs. She added that she would tell everyone on campus that he had bedwetting if he didn't come down now. The guy realized she wouldn't get off and said he'd be right down. He started hurriedly getting dressed. The officer was pleased with herself. She'd already solved a murder today. Maybe she could solve Pan's case too. Wu Tong turned to Shun and said that it wasn't hard to lift the guy. The headman realized that she also liked the young man. Chen Guang came down and greeted the girls. He said that they could set off on their journey. The officer asked why he carried that mug around with him everywhere and in such a case. The young man frowned. He didn't want to start his day with a scandal. The guy said hello to Shun and asked about her health. The girl replied that she was fine. When they were talking, Wu Tong realized from the girl's face about her feelings and got jealous of the guy. Resentment was building in the eyes of the authority figure. She realized that this little girl had a better chance. The officer grabbed Chen Guang's arm and forcefully pulled him behind her. She said that they should already leave. In the hospital, his parents were by Panjang's bedside. His mother sat down at his bedside while his father continued to stand. The man promised to call his son's classmates to find out how Chen Guang was doing now. The young man asked cheerfully if someone had been sent to him. His father replied that he must be 10 times worse off now. The door of the comfort room opened ajar. The sound of footsteps could be heard in the corridor. A team of police officers entered the room. A man grudgingly asked who else had come to the room. He angrily asked what they wanted. Wu Tong showed his ID card and accused him of attempted contract killing. 2 police officers grabbed the man. He tried to break free and demanded to call his lawyer. Panjang got angry and shouted that his father was an important person. Wu Tong stated that he himself was accused of abusing medicine. The young man couldn't believe it had gone that far. He exclaimed that their family's name should not be defamed. The woman attacked the officer and shouted indignantly that they had no right to do this to her husband and son. Wu Tong, lightning fast, clasped her hands behind her back and shoved her face into the floor. She advised her to remain silent until the trial. The officer recalled that her husband was also involved in the disappearance of one of the engineers. This will also be investigated. The man's legs gave out. He realized that the police had found out, and now he was finished. The woman wailed that it was unfair. Their family had nothing to do with it. Pang Zhang realized that their family was definitely finished now. No lawyer would be able to get them out. The police officers, one by one, began to leave the room. Chen Guang trailed behind the delegation. He couldn't stand it and turned to Pan Zhang, gloatingly whistling one of his favorite tunes. He suggested that the enemy apologize while he had time and the young man hadn't lost his mind. The young man was angry and vowed to himself that he would find a way to avenge his family's shame on all involved. Chen Guang smirked gloatingly and hummed one of the popular cheerful tunes. The boy was so engrossed that he didn't notice a huge black shadow looming over him. Wu Tong demanded that he stop gloating and forcefully pulled him towards the exit. The young man couldn't help but show his tongue. After arriving on campus, Chen Guang and the headman walked around the neighborhood. He said that it was all over. Shun turned to the young man and faintly smiled. She silently listened to her classmate. The boy asked why she was looking at him so strangely. The headmistress replied that he looked very nice. The girl said he had to prepare for the semi-finals of the swimming competition. The whole class is waiting for him to win. Chen Guang suggested that with his fame, he already has tons of female fans, but still no one has confessed their love to him. Shun stopped and let the boy pass a little ahead. She wanted to be more than a friend. The confused girl couldn't figure out what else she needed to do for Chen Guang to finally notice her feelings. Chen Guang is standing in front of the producer's armor cabinet. He is thinking about the fact that the producer forgot about him. He resents the fact that the producer doesn't call him, because he promised him the opportunity to make 100,000 in 30 seconds. He calls the number for the umpteenth time, but all he hears in response is, "The number you have dialed does not answer." Chen Guang tears up a threatening plush toy, imagining it's a bearded producer. He threatens to rip out all his hair and make him eat it. We see the bearded producer's studio, and from there we hear shouting and cheering. The producer yells at his subordinate because he can't figure out where his expensive armor is. The subordinate doesn't understand his anger because he gave it to Chen Guang himself. The producer is horrified that he forgot about Chen Guang. He was very busy with the picture. He thinks Chen Guang has a bad opinion of him. The producer calls Chen Guang. He says it's him, the bearded producer. Chen Guang pretends to be calm. He says that he has been waiting for his call all this time and was worried that he had been forgotten. The producer explains that he's been busy all this time and calls Chen Guang to the set, asking him to bring his armor. Chen Guang agrees, saying he'll be there as soon as he can. He's happy that they haven't forgotten about him. Chen Guang is standing outside the studio, arguing with a security guard. Apparently, he doesn't want to let him through. He doesn't understand why they won't let him in, since he was invited by the producer himself. The guard replies to Chen Guang that he must have a pass to get into the TV studio. He says that if Chen Guang didn't say he was from Dengxiaogong, he would have been kicked out by now. The guard leaves to contact the team. Chen Guang notices a team coming in their direction. This is his salvation. 3 beautiful girls are walking towards them. They look very beautiful, 2 of them in shooting outfits and 1 in formal wear. Chen Guang is glad that 2 popular actresses came to personally pick him up. The guard is puzzled. Chen Guang turns to the guard with a smirk, saying that why would he, such a noble guy, lie to him. The actresses say hello to Chen Guang. They introduce themselves as Jin Shiwei and Zhang Yage. The third girl is introduced as an agent. Her name is Zhou Yu Yun. She's their manager. Jin Shiwei invites Chen Guang to tea to thank him for saving them. Chen asks to be called by his first name and says that anyone would do the same for them. Jin Shiwei insists that they should thank Chen Guang. Zhang Yage joins the conversation and says that since he insists, he will be called Guang. Zhang Yage says that Chen Guang can call her favorite Yage, and Jin Shiwei just Shiwei. Chen Guang tells the girls that he needs to stop by producer Dan's house first. In the shower, Chen Guang yells that his heart is failing and he needs to run away somewhere fast. The manager pulls Yago away and tells Chen Guang not to take her words seriously, because why would she become a favorite right away? Chen replies to the manager that he already knows it was a joke. Yage yells that it wasn't a joke, but Shiwei and the manager pull her away and further. Shiwei says there's no need to scare Chen Guang with her chatter. He needs to get to the shoot first. We see that the shooting is boiling. The site is active. People are walking around with cameras and microphones. The manager holds out a check to Chen Guang. She says it's a small amount, but he shouldn't hesitate to take it. Chen Guang sees that it is a check for 100,000 yuan. He is confused. Chen Guang has never cashed such large checks before. The manager thinks Chen Guang's relationship with the actresses is better solved by money. Jage snatches the check out of the manager's hands, sneaking it right in front of Chen Guang's eyes. She yells at the manager because he saved her and Sister Shiwei's life. She thinks the manager values their lives at 100,000 yuan. Chen Guang thinks Yage wants to take his money. Shiwei pulls Yage aside again and says that the manager just doesn't know what she's doing at all. She says they need to get back to filming and not delay the process. Yage apologizes to the manager and calls for Chen Guang. The manager replies to the actresses that she didn't know how to thank her. She tells Chen Guang that he needs to go back to filming and she will figure something out. Chen Guang is sad that he lost his money. A man approaches Chen Guang. He was assigned by Deng Daoxiang. He's in charge of filming it. He wants to familiarize Chen Guang with the script. His name is Yang Dao. Chen Guang agrees. He thinks the bearded producer has taken care of him and even put a special person to tell him all about the script. He's glad that his acting skills he's been practicing will come in handy. Chen Guang is being groomed, face powdered, hair combed for his role. Yang Dao turns to Chen Guang. He says he is short on time and has a short story. He asks if he has experience in acting. Does he have experience in acting? Does he have experience in acting? Chen replies that he's been reading books a bit about it. He's still being brought up to speed. He believes that those 30 seconds, that's his key to success. He has to score brilliantly. Yang Dao enthusiastically exclaims that they are starting. He is very enthusiastic. 2 hours later, a tired Yang Dao says for the umpteenth time that they are starting. Chen Guang is preparing to repeat his scene. He's very determined. He's making a scary face. The producer is already crying because Chen Guang can't make an evil face. He tells him to open his nostrils and clench his teeth. Chen Guang follows his advice, but he fails. The producer guffaws that he is trying to nostril eat the enemy. He explains to him again that he is a great warrior who has a strong desire to kill and wants to slaughter 100 enemy soldiers. Chen is angry because the producer called his acting mediocre. He makes a horrible face that still doesn't fit. The producer doesn't understand anything because Chen Guang has been studying acting for 2 weeks. He thinks he is hopeless and can only make one famous grimace. At this moment, Yage and Shiwei return. Chen Guang thinks that Yage changed her mind and decided to give him more money. The producer is glad they came. He doesn't realize if they came to help Chen Guang. Jog asks what Chen Guang is like, since few newcomers get a 30-second scene and have a chance to be famous. Chen gets upset that she's not going to give him money. He replies to Yage that it's not bad. The producer doesn't understand what happened to Yage and why she's acting so strange. Shiwei turns to him and asks him why he's acting so bad. Did they have a problem during filming? Yang Dao begs the actresses to do something about Chen Guang. He calls him untalented. Jagi freaks out and asks the producer to watch his language. She threatens to wipe out anyone who rants at Chen Guang. An hour later, they all sit in despair. They don't know what to make of Chen Guang's terrible acting. Shiwei says it's over. There's nothing they can do to Chen Guang. Yage says that God closed the doors in front of Chen Guang at the last moment. She tells him not to worry about him not becoming an actor, because he's great at other things. Chen Guang apologizes that it's not working out for him. He says he will go apologize to Deng Daoxiang and leave. He thinks he wants money, but he can't bear this kind of shame. Deng Daoxiang is calling Chen Guang over. They will start the official filming. Chen Guang is embarrassed. So many people are looking at him. He is asking for salvation from the goddess, asking for an acting test. Chen Guang realizes that he forgot the mug in the car because of the cover. All he has to do is try his best. Deng Daoxiang puts his hand on Chen Guang's shoulder. He asks why he is so nervous, because he acted like a superhero before. But now he can't play for a measly 30 seconds. The filming starts. Chen Guang has an inappropriate face for the scene. He doesn't look intimidating at all. The scene starts to be re-recorded. Chen Guang has an inappropriate face again. The next scene is the same. The producer decides to stop filming for now. The producer is advised to take a break because everyone is tired. Dan Daoxian agrees. Chen Guang goes up to the producer and says that he's not suitable at all, that he's talentless in acting, and he doesn't want to hold everyone up. He's really ashamed. He doesn't want to torture everyone because of 100,000 yuan. Deng Daoxiang replies to Chen that it's not his fault. After the break, they will try again. They will definitely think of something. The producer actually thinks about what will happen to his reputation if he leaves. Yage is arguing with Zhou Ya. She blurts out that he should apologize to Guang. Zhou Ya says that although Chen Guang saved the sisters and it's a feat, but he can't be an actor and the producer is fiddling with him because he owes Chen. They can't mess with him forever. Dan Daoxian yells that it's his decision, and it's not up to them to decide what he wants to do with this kid. There is a sepulchral silence all around. Only the sound of the wind passing between people can be heard. Deng Daoxiang tells Chen Guang that he always has the last word on this team, and he won't give him any offense. He asks to be called uncle. Chen Guang replies to the producer that they've been filming the scene for so long already. He doesn't want to hold anyone up any longer. He suggests one more try, and he'll leave if it doesn't work out. Chen Guang thinks the only way out is to summon the goddess. Deng Daoxiang announces a break of 10 minutes. Yaga immediately runs up to Chen Guang. Yage suggests Chen Guang to go and practice. She is very enthusiastic. Chen replies that he shouldn't. He says he's not used to playing in front of a crowd and a bunch of cameras. He goes to his car and takes a sip of water. Yagi is surprised when he comes back. Zhou Ya gets into the conversation and says he's betting 80,000 yuan that when Chen Guang returns, he'll still be just as talentless. Chen replies that he should get the money ready. Chen Guang walks to the car. There is not a soul around. He can talk to the goddess in peace. Chen Guang tries to summon the goddess. He tearfully asks her to save him from this disgrace. The goddess doesn't answer his call. Chen yells at her. He thinks she's pretending not to hear him. He says he has to go to the bathroom, but there's no bathroom nearby. He's hinting at a mug. Chen Guang unbuckles his belt. Now the goddess won't be sweet if she doesn't answer his call. He looks at the mug with a smirk on his face and a little chuckle. It looks unhealthy. The goddess is sunbathing in the sun. She asks him a question about him threatening the goddess. She realizes what's about to happen and decides she should show herself. The goddess yells that she is busily working on the next test. She insults him. She complains that the gods have sent her an untrustworthy man and asks him to hide his gizmo. Chen Guang asks the goddess to give him the test because he needs those 80,000 yuan. He can win the bet if she gives him the test. The goddess irritably replies to him that if they rush him, he might not survive the mugshot. Besides, his abilities won't be enough to pass the test. Chen yells that he doesn't want to live in a world where Zhou Ya loses. The goddess agrees, but she asks for a promise that he won't take the mug cover off again, or she'll give him shock therapy. Chen Guang roots a smirk on his face and tells the goddess to hurry up. The goddess says she'll take control of his mind when he's on a roll, but she can't hold out much longer, or she'll use up all her last strength on his Ponzi scheme. She says she will punish him next time. Chen Guang is squirming a smug face. He is very satisfied with the fact that he's going to take down Zhou Ya. When the actresses in Yang Dao doesn't understand how Chen Guang has so much confidence. Yage suggests practicing to keep Chen Guang's confidence up, and asks if he has forgotten about the argument with Zhou Ya. Chen Guang replies that he is ready. Chen Guang thinks in his mind that he wants to see Zhou Ya's face when he takes his money. Dan Daoxian announces that the break is over and they start filming. Everyone should get ready. Chen Guang in his mind asks the goddess to help him, and Deng Daoxiang that Chen Guang cannot lose. Zhou Ya thinks he has already won, and it will be very easy money for him. The goddess tells Chen Guang that she is going to take control and he should stop and do nothing. A blue star appears in the goddess's hands, illuminating her with green mixed with blue. A sort of aura appears around Chen Guang. He is filled with determination and completely confident. Shiwei and Yage look with surprise at Chen Guang. They don't understand what's going on. Chen Guang portrays the perfect evil face for the leader of the army. He plays it perfectly. Chen Guang is unrivaled when the goddess takes control of him. He plays the emotions perfectly. Deng Daoxiang sees all this and doesn't understand how it's possible because 10 minutes ago his acting was terrible. He can't believe this perfect and unique acting. He's just in shock. Dan Daoxian is asked if this will do. He replies that it's just perfect. No, just perfect. Yage beckons Chen Guang to come over. She wants to congratulate him on a successful shoot. She says that she knew he could do it. Chen Guang replies that he was just lucky, but at the same time he thinks that the goddess really didn't let him down. Shiwei also thinks Chen's acting is perfect, and he's great. She's proud of him. Zhou Ya can't believe he succeeded. He accuses Deng Daoxiang of being in cahoots. Deng Daoxiang replies that you just have to know how to lose. Zhou Ya looks at the footage. He's just stunned because his acting is perfect. Chen Guang thinks that he should have asked her right away, because with the goddess's help, everything came out so easily. The goddess reads his thoughts and repeats them. Chen Guang thinks it doesn't scare him. The goddess replies to him that she's going to go deal with making sure he doesn't get killed in the next test. She says how lucky he is to have her. Chen Guang casts a sharp glance. He notices Zhou Ya and is about to approach him. He approaches Zhou Ya and asks how he likes his acting. Zhou Ya has to justify his words. Zhou Ya apologizes to Chen Guang in embarrassment. He asks him to forgive him for being rude. Chen Guang realizes that he was worried about the quality of his play. Chen Guang doesn't forget that they argued with Zhou Ya. He reminds him of that. Deng Daoxiang turns to Zhou Ya and says that there is no need to be upset about losing. Zhou Ya replies that the money will be transferred to Chen Guang's account soon. He is confused. The payment of 80,000 yuan goes through successfully and arrives in Chen Guang's father's account. Chen Guang calls his father and tells him that he earned it honestly. He asks him to take care of himself, buy his mom medicine for the rest of the year, and not to tell her that he earned so much money, because she will worry. Chen Guang is shocked by what his father told him. He said that his mother would be examined soon and would probably have a kidney transplant, but it would cost 500,000 yuan. Father tells Chen Guang that this is a rare opportunity. Chen Guang says he will try to make money. For his mother, another 300,000 yuan is needed to pay for the transplant. Chen Guang realizes that he can't ask the goddess for anything again, because she will strangle him. Two cars, a red car and a yellow car, are speeding down the road from the studio. The red one belongs to Chen Guang. Chen Guang calls out from another passing car, hitchhiking to catch up with him. It was sisters Shiwei and Yage. Chen Guang says what a lucky coincidence. The sisters ask where he is in such a big hurry. Chen is in a bit of a state of confusion. Chen Guang replies that he is in a hurry to go to the university, because he is still studying and he has to take his exams in 2 weeks. He thinks that if he passes the exam, he will be well rewarded. The sisters reply that they were also going to Wujing University. They ask Chen Guang to give them a tour. Chen Guang hesitantly answers them that he suddenly wanted to go to an amusement park, to remember his childhood. In fact, he is thinking that he will be torn up at the university if he goes there with his sisters, and they won't follow him to the amusement park. Yage lights up with the idea of going to an amusement park with Chen Guang, because it's much more interesting than university campuses. Shiwei tells Yage to calm down. Chen Guang admits that he just doesn't want to go to crowded places with celebrities, because he wants a quiet life. Yage replies to him that no one would recognize them if they were in casual clothes. Chen Guang is thinking about how clingy Yage is. He's thinking about how he can escape as soon as possible. He thinks about how he doesn't care, and he's going to get away from them soon. Chen Guang shouts one last apology that he's in a hurry and doesn't have time. Jage asks him to stop, but Chen is already moving away to a distance where he can't hear anymore. She yells that she really likes him, but Chen can't hear it anymore. Chen Guang leaves without ever hearing the confession of a very embarrassed Jaga, riding off into the distance. Shiwei rebukes Yage for scaring Chen Guang away. Yage can't calm down, because most people would be beyond happy if she confessed her love to them. But Chen pays no attention. Yage doesn't agree that Chen Guang is so eager to escape. She's just furious. Jag is chasing after Chen Guang's car. He doesn't know it yet and is driving leisurely. Chen Guang doesn't suspect anything. He thinks he has no problem leaving the sissies. Chen notices in the rearview mirror that the sissy girl's car is chasing him. Yage doesn't give up. She really wants to catch up with Chen Guang and tell him how she feels. The sisters catch up with Chen Guang because some old car can't keep up with a Ferrari. The sisters behave completely differently. A light appears from the mug. Chen doesn't realize what's going on. After all, it's just plain water. The goddess comes to Chen Guang's rescue and takes him in a mug. She is his savior. Chen remembers that the goddess promised to take revenge on him. He must be careful. He swivels his head around and yells for her to stop. After all, she said herself that she doesn't have much energy. She's gonna hurt them both. Chen, not seeing the goddess, steps right on the goddess' face. A few seconds of silence passes. The goddess in a trembling voice asks Chen Guang to take his foot off her divine face. The goddess yells at him and is outraged, because how could Chen Guang step on the goddess's face? Chen mocks the goddess. He asks if it is customary for gods to bury themselves in the ground. He jokes wittily that he can't believe he'll grow a new goddess in the fall. He gets an idea. The goddess explains that she had to expend all her spiritual energy to take possession of his body, and she also lost her swimsuit and doesn't have the strength to hide in the sea of clouds. Chen wonders why she brought him here then. He thinks now is the perfect opportunity to answer this goddess for her abuse. The goddess tells him to stay away, for she has two pieces of news, good and bad. If he does anything to her, she will only tell him the bad news. Chen calms down and says he won't do anything. Her facial expression makes it clear that she is serious. The goddess tells two pieces of news, namely narrowing the inside of the mug. This will cut down on the time it takes to prepare the next test. The bad news is that the anguish is too great. Chen could have died before the test even started. But she is very kind to Chen Guang, so she made the change. Thus she saved him. If she didn't, Chen Guang would have to become the king of death for hundreds of millions of years. Chen asks if the news she wanted to tell is over. He prepares to get back at her. The goddess knows that the next test will definitely teach Chen Guang a lesson that won't hurt him. Chen Guang retracts from his mug. He regrets that he missed a good opportunity to take revenge on the goddess. Chen appears in a new world. He appears in some obscure pixelated world. This is some very primitive world. This place seems very strange to him. The goddess explains that these are the consequences of Chen Guang's actions. There used to be a beautiful landscape with a beautiful lake, but now it's a pixelated world. The goddess tells the rules. Chen must drive the car and complete the tasks. After each death, he will start from the level he was on. He has 100 lives. Chen thinks it will be easy for him since driving is in his blood, and besides, he has 100 tries. The goddess replies that he only has 99 attempts, and the 100th time he will die for real. The first task is that he needs to get to radar number 1 while maintaining a speed of 120 kilometers per hour. Chen thinks that's easy. Chen Guang gets hit by a NPS and flips him sideways. He definitely doesn't care about his car. Chen loses one of his lives. He thinks 100 lives is a lot. From behind, a truck approaches Chen Guang. It honks and has no intention of stopping. A truck drives over Chen Guang's car and his car goes flat. Chen realizes that even though he's become a pixel man, it's much more painful for him to die. The goddess informs him that she forgot to tell him that Chen Guang has some weak willpower, so she added something. The goddess explains with a snide face that she has doubled his sense of pain. Chen wants to put a sock in that goddess's mouth so she'll shut up and leave him alone. In the first level, Chen lost 13 deaths. The second level is to maintain 180 kilometers per hour for 20 seconds and survive. Chen says that the top speed of this car is less than 180 kilometers per hour. A message appears. About improving the car, it turns out. The characteristics can be increased. Chen pumps everything into one characteristic. He's sure this car will drive very differently now. Chen says the most important thing for someone who accelerates to such speeds is not to fear death. Chen accelerates up to 180 kilometers per hour. He says that with a car like this, you can take off. There's a turn in front of Chen, and he says he's about to demonstrate his driving skills. Chen holds the right speed for 18 seconds and enters the corners at it. Chen Guang has been holding on for 19 seconds now. He's got a great grip on the car. At the 20th second, Chen explodes, his car flying apart. Chen did make it past the second level, though. He needs to improve the car again. Next is the third level. It is not particularly different. Chen Guang has also knocked cars off the track. On the fourth level, Chen Guang was clamped by 2 trucks and crushed. He didn't know what he was supposed to do. Chen had successfully reached the 9th level. He really wants to repay the goddess after all this torment. The final task is to complete the Dakar rally. Chen yells at the car, for he has few lives left. Chen successfully crosses the finish line. It was a tough test for Chen Guang. Chen is finally freed from the constant smashing and crushing. The case was made worse by the goddess's system of willpower. Chen has gone through 9 levels with 95 deaths. He's very dissatisfied. Chen gets out of the pixel world, but the goddess forbids him from opening his eyes. She pokes him in the eyes with her fingers so he can't see anything in any way. Now, after going through all the levels on the bad car, Chen can drive his car perfectly. The naked goddess throws Chen Guang out of the mug, but he promises to come back. After practicing in the circle, Chen has become a true driving god and he has no equal in it. However, the sisters have too good car. Chen will not be able to demonstrate their skills to the fullest. Chen wants to lure them to Fengquan Mountain, which is the racetrack of Wujin City. Chen enters corners sideways at full speed. He's not afraid of anything, because he's a driving god. Yage doesn't understand why Chen Guang swerved, to which Shiwei replies to her that he wants to take them to a more scenic and deserted place. While the sisters are chasing Chen Guang, Shiwei gets a call from the manager. She apologizes and says she will find another chance to give the check. She also says they are following them in 3 cars. Shiwei says she'll try to talk Yage out of it, but she also says there's no need to worry since she's with her. She is calm since the manager is following them. They are traveling along the mountainous winding road. They are already approaching Fengquan Mountain. There are already people standing at the entrance of Fengquan Mountain. They are riders who like to ride on the mountain roads. Chen notices them. He is confident in himself and in his divine driving in which he has no equal. He notices a very familiar car. When he saw it, he realized who it was. He met his abuser who was in his way. He must surely teach him a lesson. When he was delivering tofu, the driver of this car cut him off on the road, and Chen was afraid to scratch his car. Chen tolerated as much as he could, but this time, he would get back at him. There is a racer on the mountain. He notices Chen Guang's car. He is furious because Lao Tzu is racing here. He doesn't understand what such a bad car is doing here. The guy standing next to him offers to wreck Chen Guang's car because his father gave him 80,000 yuan for pocket money. They can compensate for the damage. Chen is at his best in terms of driving. There's a certain aura around him. Chen can tear it up on this racetrack. Chen is carrying on at breakneck speed. He's not going to stop. He's full of determination. Chen Guang presses the clutch pedal with all his might and is about to enter the corner. He's kicked into gear and ready for another maneuver. He's sure to show them what he can do. Chen Guang turns the steering wheel towards the skid. Now he's going to knock everyone down with his skill. Chen Guang goes sideways into the corner. He doesn't hit anyone and whizzes past the riders at insane speeds. He goes out on a long arc. He's very close to the edge and he keeps the right distance perfectly. As he drives away, he says to himself that those who underestimated him should swallow the dust from beneath his wheels. The guys on the mountain, they're pissed. For them, the racers, it's a low blow. The other guy says Chen can't handle the next turn, because you can't make even a millimeter of mistake there. But the first guy can't settle down. He wanted to chase him. Chen Guang is now being chased by 2 cars. The first is the sissies, the second is a local racer. They see Chen Guang enter the corner, keeping a perfect distance to the edge. Sis Yage doesn't dare to enter the same corner at high speed because she doesn't have enough skill. She can't believe Chen is so cool. The sisters are bypassed by 2 cars. They are racers who decided to chase after Chen Guang. Jag is pissed off that Chen is trying his best to get away from her. She doesn't understand why he's acting like this. Shiwei says to catch up with him and see if he's okay. Chen continues to drive like nothing has happened. He is calm and confident. His control of the car is amazing. Chen is already approaching the normal road. He drove down Fengquan Mountain, knocking over the rich people. He doesn't understand why they need such expensive cars if they can't keep up with him. Chen says they will only be able to reach his driving god in their dreams. Chen is thrilled with his driving skills. He wants to call the sissies and tell them that chasing them is pointless. He calls Shiwei. He asks her to tell Yag that there's no point in chasing him anymore, because they really shouldn't be out in public together. He also asks her to make sure that Yage doesn't chase him so much, because he's worried about his safety. Shiwei replies to him that they are taking a leisurely drive now. Chen tells her that maybe they'll meet again when they get a chance, somewhere quiet. Yage asks Shiwei not to hang up. She wants to talk to Chen Guang. Shiwei is puzzled. Jaga tries to woo Chen Guang with the expensive watch she bought him for saving them. Chen replies that he doesn't need it because he's used to watching the time on his phone, so it's no use to him. Chen decides to see what the approximate price of this watch is. He thinks it's not particularly expensive. He can't believe what he sees. The watch is worth a lot of money. He's in shock. He sees the price of a couple 100,000 yuan. He realizes that this amount should be enough to pay for his mother's surgery. Chen regrets that he missed such a chance and such money. He thinks his life is a series of failures. Jaga doesn't give up and keeps calling Chen Guang. He doesn't understand where this persistence comes from. Chen answers the phone. Yag says they are now at the top of the Fengquan mountain trail. Chen Guang is surprised. He doesn't understand why they still haven't left the mountain. Jaga says that if he doesn't come to them now, she'll just throw that watch off the mountain since it was meant specifically for him. Chen says there's no need to throw hundreds of thousands in the trash. He'll take it from them in a couple days anyway, because there are still a couple riders following him, so he won't be able to come to them. Jaga agrees. Chen calms down. He can exhale in peace. Now he will be able to pay for his mom's surgery. Yag ends the call. Now she feels calm. She's glad she talked to Chen Guang. Shiwei suggests just asking the manager for his bank account and dropping the money there. Yaga can't agree to this, because if they transfer the money to him, they won't have an excuse to meet. Yage doesn't understand why Shiwei is so eager to give Chen Guang money. Shiwei realizes that Chen Guang only cares about money, and she herself is not interested in him. She feels sorry for Yage. Yage really wants to meet Chen Guang. She has been dreaming about it for a long time. Chen Guang is still being chased by the mountain riders, but Chen Guang doesn't suspect it. Suddenly Chen hears some incomprehensible sound from behind him. It is unexpected to him. The racers catch up with Chen Guang. He didn't expect them to be able to catch up with him so quickly. While Chen was talking to Yag, he managed to forget that the racers were still chasing him. Chen gets serious again. He presses the gas pedal again and says he's about to show you how to drive on a dirt track. Chen speeds up. He's about to break away from the pursuing riders from the mountain. Suddenly, Chen hears some strange sound. It seems like something happened. It appears that the rider was unable to handle the control in the corner and went flying into the water. Chen decides he must save him. He picks up his baton and prepares for a new feat. The racers are outraged. They resent him for daring to approach them. One of the main ones suggests beating Chen Guang. Chen pushes the obnoxious guy away and says how can he do that when his friend flew into the water. Chen is furious. He reproaches them for their habit of only having fun. He asks if anyone has a waterproof flashlight. Chen leaves his stuff on the ground. He's going to climb into the water and rescue the racer. Chen jumps into the water. He thinks about the fact that he just wanted them to get lost still on the mountain instead of falling into the water. He's sure he won't let him die. Chen floats over to the car window. He hears a knock on it. The racer seems to be okay. He moves even closer to the car window. He is surprised. The proud racer squirming a grimace of fear on his face. Chen tries to open the door by the handle, but the air pressure inside the car prevents the door from opening. He makes the decision to break the window so the racer can get out of the flooded car. Chen Guang hits the window with his baton with all his might. He hits several times. Chen Guang's efforts are making cracks along the window. He's not quite succeeding. Chen realizes he has to do things quickly before the car fills with water. Chen Guang briefly smashes the cracked window with his clenched fist. He injures his hand and it immediately starts bleeding. Chen Guang doesn't care. Chen takes the racer by the collar. He gathers his strength to pull him out. He pulls him through the broken window in one swift motion out of the flooded car. Chen swims with the racer to the surface, still holding him only by the collar. He quickly makes his way to shore with the rider who has managed to pass out. A friend of the racer quickly runs up to the injured man. He asks if he's okay. The injured man is quickly carried away by his friends. Chen Guang no one thanked. Chen Guang is all wet. He quickly puts on his clothes to make sure he doesn't freeze in any way. Chen Guang's arm is badly injured and bleeding a lot. Chen shakes it to take away the pain. Chen only realizes that he lost his baton when he rescued the racer. He really hopes that this injury will not prevent him from driving in any way. A rider approaches Chen Guang, looking intimidating. Chen thinks he's about to be attacked, but he's unarmed. Chen Guang turns to the rider. He says that he won't attack the wounded man after all. He asks him to step back. The racer grabs Chen Guang's hand. Chen is puzzled and doesn't understand what's going on. Chen yells at the racer. He says that even though they were racing, it wasn't his fault that his friend fell into the water. At the same time, he thinks the racer is posturing like he's about to propose. The rider looks at Chen Guang strangely. He wonders if he is even normal. The injured rider who was pulled out by Chen tells him to stop quickly. He yells at him and says that Chen Guang saved him and he'll deal with him himself. The victim calls Chen Guang a driving god and thanks him for saving him. His name is Zhang Bai, and the people around him are his friends, and they are very worried about him. He apologizes. Chen asks to stop talking about his feat. He's embarrassed by it. Chen Guang is relieved that Junbai wasn't going to confess his love to him. Zhongbai refers to Chen Guang as the god of driving again. He's worried about his hand. He's ashamed that it's because of him. He doesn't feel sorry for his car. He feels sorry for Chen Guang's arm. Chen replies to him that he's had bigger injuries. He wants to seem cool in front of a group of fans. A cute-looking girl approaches Chen Guang. She asks if he's okay. She asks Chen Guang to take it seriously. She asks to take care of his hand. The girl's name is Jufei. She's Zhongbai's friend. She's pouring water on Chen Guang's hand. Chen Guang involuntarily looks at Jufei's chest, his heart starting to beat more frequently. Chen Guang tells her his name. He is thinking at this moment that she is very beautiful. The girl tells Junbai that he should be grateful to him with all his soul, since Chen is wounded almost to the bone. He doesn't stop bowing and admitting his guilt. Chen says he shouldn't worry about it. The wound will heal quickly. The guys say the god of driving is lenient. She is very good at wrapping Chen Guang's arm with a new bandage. She is trying. Jufei has some question. She says that as soon as she saw Chen driving, she had this question. She asks Chen Guang to teach her how to drive. She wants him to be her teacher. All the racers pick up on her idea and ask her to teach them his divine driving skills too. Chen is nonchalant on the outside, but on the inside he laughs at them. He calls them a bunch of assholes. He knows he can get rich off them. Chen abruptly pulls his hand out of Jufei's hand. She didn't expect it and was a little surprised. He says he knows they want to learn, but it will be very difficult for them to reach his level. Junbai pats his chest and blurts out that they are not afraid of anything, not even death. They only want to drive as fast as him. The other drivers support him. They too want to drive as fast as he does. Chen rises decisively. He says that since they want it so badly, so be it. He says he can't teach any one person. He'll teach them all at once. Chen voices the price for one training session for one day, which is 100,000 yuan. He thinks that these majors will gladly fork out that kind of money. Zhongbai and Rufei are happy that it's only 100,000 yuan a day. They say that Chen is very kind, and apparently such great people don't care about money since the price is so symbolic. They say goodbye to the god of driving. They say if they've got a deal, they're off. Chen stands in utter bewilderment, needing time to process all this information. Chen looks at his hand. He wonders why she tied the bandage with a bow. Chen Guang needs to go home. He has to talk to his teacher. She must be mad that Chen missed the swimming competition. He's inspecting the car. Chen Guang is lucky that the car didn't explode halfway through, but he will have to call a tow truck because there is no service station nearby. Chen Guang gets a call from his friend, Zhu Jifa. He doesn't understand why he's calling him. He is worried about his car. He gets a call from the insurance company saying that Chen has ordered a tow truck. Chen replies that he just ran out of fuel. He tells him not to worry. Chen thinks the breakdown is serious, and the owner of the car is Zhu. Zhu Jifa asks to take photos of the car from different angles, from all sides. Chen realizes he's been caught. Zhu Jifa is shocked. He asks if Chen Guang is okay, grabbing his phone. Chen tells his friend that everything is fine. When he was driving, there was suddenly smoke inside. He thought his friend would feel sorry for the car, so he said he ran out of fuel. Zhu Jifa says the important thing is that Chen is okay. He says the insurance won't cover the breakdown. He'll send him money for repairs and ends the call. Chen Guang receives a payment of 20,000 yuan. He didn't expect it. Chen is annoyed. He calls Zhu to refuse. He doesn't want him to think he's a beggar. In a couple of days, Chen becomes a car instructor who earns 100,000 yuan a day. Chen Guang is answered by another person. Zhu asked him to tell him that he had left for a meeting and would be gone for a long time. And he also sent a person to take Chen Guang's parents to the hospital in 2 days. He doesn't have to worry about money, and he has to fix the car faster. Chen slowly twirls the doorknob so as not to disturb anyone and so that no one will notice him. He really hopes he doesn't bump into his friends and walks quietly into the room. Chen Guang is immediately approached by his friends. He did not manage to pass unnoticed. They immediately ask him where his injuries are coming from, and also tell him that the bow tie really suits him. They ask him why he didn't come to play, if it was because of the wound. They immediately want to avenge him and beat up the offender who dared to do so. Chen replies that it's just a minor wound and it's better to stop pushing it. He says that he was just driving a car, and then he saw a guy drowning with the car, and when he was rescuing him, he accidentally hurt himself. He's told that he has to go to Teacher Zhou's house in the morning. Chen is eating breakfast in the dining room. He sits alone at the table. He can't eat in peace. Chen's phone is ringing off the hook because of the constant calls, and he gets a call from Zhou's teacher. The teacher asks if Chen Guang has a lesson in the morning and asks him to come into her office. Chen replies that he will be there in 15 minutes. Chen just wanted to participate, not become permanently obligated. He should accept it. Chen walks into the office and greets the teacher, waving her sore hand. The teacher immediately sees Chen Guang's hand. She is at a complete loss as to how this could happen. She asks what's wrong with his arm. Chen replies that he's having family problems after he took care of business. He was in a hurry to get to the competition. On his way back, he saw a car with a man drowning in the river and went to rescue the man, causing him to hurt himself. The teacher thinks he's trying to trick her. She wants to see what other excuses he has. She picks up her medicine cabinet. She's not going to help him. She wants to take him out. She reproaches the guys for not taking care of themselves at all. She asks if it's yesterday's bandage, asks him to come over to change it. The teacher wants to get him out of the way. Chen tries to talk himself out of it. He says there's no point, because if you take off the bandage, the wound will open up. The teacher runs up to Chen Guang and asks to take a look at it, because if it's not replaced in time, it could get infected. She thinks there is no wound. Chen flatly refuses. There is no way he wants her to see his wound. Chen unintentionally waves his hands and grabs the teacher's breasts. She is shocked. The teacher doesn't realize what's going on. She just stares at his hand in bewilderment. Chen Guang apologizes to the teacher for the unpleasant situation, his heart beating very fast. The teacher is embarrassed. Chen thinks he's finished, another sin in his piggy bank. The teacher asks how Chen could do such a thing, and thinks to herself that he did say his arm hurt, didn't he? Chen yells that now is as good a time as any to change the bandage and slams his hand on the table. Chen quickly removes the bloody bandage through the pain, his wounds reopening. The teacher sees that the wound is really there and he wasn't lying to her. She says it's too early to take it off. Chen is in a lot of pain from removing the bandage and opening the wounds. The teacher tearfully asks him not to take off the blindfold. She asks him to stop. Chen then asks her to help him wrap the blindfold back on. The teacher turns to Chen Guang. She says that she didn't just call him because of the competition. Chen Guang blushes heavily and asks why the teacher called him then. A man enters the room abruptly and dispels the awkward atmosphere that has prevailed in the office. It's the principal, asking Teacher Joe to come to his office to tell him some news. Chen looks at the principal with a sullen look. He came at the worst possible time. The principal asks Teacher Joe what's up with Chen Guang. He asks if he got into a fight. Chen Guang is angry with the principal. The teacher tells him to wait until she goes in to see the principal. The principal's reputation is not good. He is forever catching students in the slightest misbehavior and blackmailing them for his own good. Chen hits the table with his sore hand, with words that he wants to punch the principal in the face. Realizing that he has hit the table with his sore hand, he begins to squirm in pain. Teacher Joe returns to the office. She's a little sullen and thinking about something. Chen asks if the teacher is okay, since she looks loaded. The teacher explains that she called him in because she thought it would be a good idea to get him on an increased scholarship next semester. For the past 6 months, Chen has been studying and earning money in parallel. She wanted to help him. The teacher said that if Chen scored 85 points in all subjects, he could receive a scholarship of 10,000 yuan. Chen says that the teacher knows what his grades are after all, and he probably won't be able to. Chen thinks about the fact that if he were to teach writers at 100,000 yuan a day, memorizing every subject for the sake of 10,000 yuan a month is not worth it. The teacher asks Chen Guang if he is giving up without trying. Chen replies that no, but he's more interested in what the teacher was puzzled by the principal. Joe decides to tell Chen, but asks him not to tell anyone. They sit opposite each other, and the teacher tells Chen Guang the whole situation. It turns out that the principal has transferred exchange students to Chen Guang's class. He hits the table with his sore hand in anger. Chen is in a lot of pain again due to hitting his sore hand on the table again. The teacher says there should be no problems with communication, but what will happen with academic communication is not clear. Chen Guang gets angry and asks if the director has done something like this before. The teacher is confused. She thinks about what she should answer him. She answers Chen Guang positively. These situations have happened before. Chen roots a satisfied smirk on his face. He's already come up with a plan on how he's going to get it right. He tells the teacher that she shouldn't worry about the academic exchange because he's on her side. He won't let the principal do what he's planning. At the student meeting, Chen will speak in English. Chen recalls that his agony on the pirate ship, it turns out, was not wasted. Teacher Joe thinks she's being foolish, told Chen Guang about it. She wants to call an ambulance. She thinks there's something else she can do to help him. Chen yells at the teacher. Can't she believe in his abilities? He tries to help her get back at the principal, and she thanks him by calling an ambulance. The teacher is silent. She looks at him calmly. Silently. She pulls out some kind of folder. She calmly pulls absolutely all of Chen Guang's English tests out of the folder. The teacher with a calm face shows them to Chen Guang. He failed all the tests. Chen is confused. He asks how she got her test scores and says he can learn everything in 3 days. Chen Guang's classmate looks at him in surprise and can't believe what he told her. She says Chen is the only student who didn't pass the English exam, and he says he will speak English at the student meeting. And Chen confirms it. She says it will be a disgrace and Teacher Joe has gone crazy. Xiao Xun hears the conversation. She yells at her classmates for speaking so poorly of Chen Guang. Xiao Xun asks Chen Guang if he's really confident, to which Chen replies that it's not a problem for him. Chen thinks he will be like a wolf in sheep's clothing, and they will all be shocked. The principal calls Teacher Joe an interesting woman while smoking a cigarette. She let Chen speak at the meeting. the guy who failed all the tests. The principal is happy about this situation, because he will finally have the opportunity to expel Chen Guang from the university. He looks lustfully at the picture of Teacher Zhou on his phone. 4 days afterward, the events are moved to a university dormitory. Chen Guang wakes up as if nothing has happened. He feels some discomfort. He wakes up completely bound. He can't move at all. His friends tell him that they sat up until 5 in the morning preparing papers for his meeting. They were afraid he would get scared and decide to run away. So they tied him up, but Chen doesn't understand why in the shibari style. The friends take Chen Guang in their arms and are going to carry him to the meeting like this. Chen asks to untie him. He also asks that his right arm not be touched, for he is injured. The events are moved to a meeting of exchange students where Chen Guang will be in charge. There are already people in front of the students, chatting with them and laughing. Chen Guang's friends pray for Chen Guang's success. They pray that he becomes a master of English. The director is excited for the big show and Chen Guang's failure before his eyes. Chen walks past him with a nonchalant look. The principal looks at him with a sneer. The director sees that Chen Guang's sheets are inscribed in Chinese. He doesn't understand what he's going to do and how he's going to get out of it. The friends sit around and are very worried about Guang. None of them believe in his abilities except Xiaosun. Chen prepares himself before beginning his speech. He coughs and gathers his thoughts. Chen Guang recalls a time when he was on a box and communicated in English. He starts reading everything from worksheets that are written in Chinese. He reads in perfect English. The friends are just shocked at what's happening. They can't believe it's Chen Guang. The director doesn't understand how this could be possible. His expectations have been shattered. Chen Guang's speech goes on. He speaks in perfect English and has no intention of stopping. A gray-haired man stands up in the audience and wants to ask him a question. He also speaks in English. He has no problem understanding the question and answering it in the same plain English. Chen Guang's friends don't understand what's going on and how this is possible, since he has always written horribly in English tests. Xiaosun knew that he would succeed. After all, he had never let her down and she had faith in him. The man who asked the question is shocked. It's like he's talking to a British gentleman. Chen Guang has a medieval European accent. They continue to communicate with the man. He has no problem answering all his questions. Chen thinks that now we can forget about his exams and they should bow down to him. The principal is shocked. He wanted to ruin Teacher Zhou's reputation. He even invited Vice President Han, and it turns out Chen's English is excellent. The vice president says that Chen Guang is a capable guy. He turns to the director, asking for his opinion. The director has to reply, overpowering his pride, that Chen Guang is really good. Chen Guang finished his speech and the events carry over to their classroom, everyone crowded around him. Everyone is standing around Chen Guang. They have tons of questions, and it's like they're about to pounce on him. Chen Guang's friends begin to question him about how he could hide his English abilities from them. He is asked to explain himself, for he made Xiaosun worry and question her methods. Chen says he just wanted to surprise everyone, since they mocked him when he couldn't pass the test. He says he was afraid to say it because it would be overheard and reported to the principal, and he and Teacher Zhou would have a hard time. Footsteps are heard in the hallway. Chen Guang and his friends don't hear them. They continue to chat. It is Teacher Zhou along with the principal and vice president. They approach Chen Guang's classroom. Chen Guang's friends are shocked that the academic exchange was arranged by the principal. Now they understand why Chen didn't want anyone to know about his English level. Chen tells them to calm down, as they are only students and can't do much. He says that they should protect Teacher Zhou because the principal will try to take revenge. The principal bursts into the classroom and yells at the students for making so much noise. It's a company of vice president and Teacher Zhou, led by the principal. An awkward atmosphere hung in the air. One could feel as if there was some anger coming from the principal. As soon as Chen Guang's friends see the principal, they immediately become angry. Chen tells them to calm down. He'll take care of everything. He guarantees to put him in a situation where he'll go under. He approaches the principal, explaining that they were just discussing how lucky the exchange students are with the leadership and the principal. The principal says it's really nice, but they were just being very noisy during class. And he himself is thinking about how he can get revenge and outplay Chen Guang. The vice president turns to the director and says he has done a great job. The principal thanks the vice president. The vice president invites Teacher Zhou to join the Little League committee, saying that she is a great teacher and should be given a chance. Teacher Zhou thanks the vice president because it's worth it to get such words from him. Chen thinks that if the teacher gets on the committee, she will no longer be afraid of the principal's intrigues. He goes to the principal and asks how he is, because he doesn't look well. The principal says he's fine, his blood sugar's just low, and he's gonna go. The vice president is surprised, because before that the director said he had a heart condition. In the dining hall assembly, the whole class celebrates Chen Guang's feat. Everyone is proud of him. Chen is unhappy about drinking alcohol, because he is a cab driver and he is not allowed to drink while driving, or before driving. Xiaosun asks Chen Guang not to offer alcohol to Chen Guang because he's injured and can't have any. She replies that they don't force anyone and she's just like a mommy. Friends have fun with Chen Guang. They make fun of him and strangle him in a friendly way. Teacher Jo is also part of the celebration. She drinks instead of with everyone else. Everyone goes outside and continues to have fun. The celebration continues. Teacher Jo calls out to Chen Guang. She wants to ask him some question. She says it's time for him to change the bandage on his arm, but he says he doesn't need to since it's almost healed. Teacher Jo insists that she must change her blindfold. Chen Guang continues to resist. In fact, he just doesn't want to be alone with the teacher. Chen Guang notices a cab nearby and decides that this is his salvation. He must act quickly. Chen Guang says goodbye to the teacher and asks her to be careful on her way home. She thinks about the fact that all she wanted to do was change his Bing and he got scared. The cab driver asks where Chen Guang is going, and he says Wujing Lake. He thinks that the cab driver saved him and that he needs to go for a walk before going to bed so he can hide from his teacher. Chen Guang arrives at Wujing Lake to take a walk before going to bed. Weather, not a soul outside. Chen Guang hears some sounds as if someone was trying to stop someone. There's a guy running at Chen Guang with a knife. It doesn't look like he's running at Chen Guang specifically. There's a whole bunch of cops chasing the robber, and they're very actively pursuing him. He is caught up by police officer Wu Tung. She yells that he can't run far. She hits the man fleeing from pursuit on the shoulder, causing him to fall to the ground. She asks that no other police officers approach. She wants to deal with him herself. Chen Guang realizes that it is Wu Tung. He is confident that she will cripple the attacker. Wu Tung punches the man in the arm and accurately knocks the knife out of the attacker's hands. The criminal shouts to Chen Guang to hurry up and get out of his way. Wu Tung yells at Chen Guang to move away, because this guy is a very dangerous robber. Chen trips the mugger, and he immediately loses his balance and falls. Chen Guang couldn't let such a pathetic robber get away with it. The robber turns to Chen Guang and says he has memorized his face, warning him that his days are numbered within 3 days. Chen covers his face with his hood and jokingly asks the mugger not to hit him. Wu Tong notices that it is Chen Guang hiding under the hood and is surprised. She asks what he's doing in the middle of the night by the lake, to which Chen asks if they'd believe him if he said he was out for a walk. She doesn't. Chen rebukes her for helping the police and being treated like that. But Wu Tong replies that she's like an older sister to him and she can treat him like that. Chen then replies that they were playing games with a friend, so he's going home at this hour. Wu Tun volunteers to drive him home, as it would be difficult for him to get a cab at this hour. Chen agrees to it, and thinks to himself that even she can't resist his beauty. They pull up to the dormitory. Chen Guang gets out of the police car. Wu Tong apologizes for threatening him that she will put him in jail. She says that if he has any problems, he can go to her. Chen Guang says that she may not worry about it. He is not worried about it. Wu Tun is very confused. She can't understand why she feels this way. Chen approaches the room quietly. The sounds of talking can be heard from the hallway. He hears people outside the door discussing him. Someone is not happy about the girls falling in love with him. They want to pour sulfuric acid on his face. Chen abruptly opens the door and bursts into the room, scaring those inside. Chen is very angry. He is not happy about being discussed by his friends behind his back. He sees his friends who did not expect this turn of events. They say, "Why does he open the door so fast? He's going to wake someone up." Chen Guang says that Shuner sleeps like a dead man. He is not easily awakened. He questions the fact that someone wanted to pour sulfuric acid on him. He wonders if they forgot about his story at the restaurant. He's sharpening his pencil. His friends ask Chen Guang to calm down, for they often say such things, and that he should be careful when sharpening his pencil, for he might hurt his wounded hand that way. Chen tells him to spare them. He asks for a glass of water as an apology. He's actually too lazy to deal with them and just wants to rest. Light once again appears from the mug, and Chen Guang has that familiar feeling again. Chen appears in the middle of the sky, but he doesn't see the goddess. He doesn't realize where she is. He screams and calls for the goddess. He yells with all his might. He shouts to her that he is from here. Chen Guang doesn't understand where the goddess is, since she chose him to free her. He says that apparently he will have to move on his own. A portal appears behind him. The goddess appears. She resents Chen for burying her right away. It took her longer to accumulate magical powers. Chen is happy for her that she is in one piece. He asks what that light is. Chen Guang falls to the ground and resents her for letting him go so abruptly. He looks around and notices that everything looks better than last time, looking more and more like the real world. Chen Guang stands in front of a pile of pencils embedded in the ground. He doesn't understand if the goddess wants to make him a master of intimidating people. Chen sees a stationary knife. Apparently it's another one of the holy worlds inside the mug, and it only needs to sharpen pencils. Chen Guang says this test is too situational. After all, it means that the next time he goes to the toilet, he will probably have to start taking a test on his skills in hitting the toilet with a jet. He says it's just pencil sharpening, and it's going to be hard to screw up here. It sharpened the first pencil perfectly, so much so that it was like it was glowing. A message appears telling him that he still has 98 points left until the next level. Chen sharpens his pencils further. He has no choice but to sharpen his pencils. One pencil breaks. He gets upset. The pencil crumbles into a bunch of fibers. A message appears saying that 1 point will be deducted for breaking a pencil. Chen Guang resents the fact that he has sharpened so many pencils and is penalized for one broken pencil. He is left with 532 points. No one answers Chen Guang. There is absolute silence all around. He turns around sullenly and says it's okay not to answer him then. Morning comes, Chen Guang already needs to gain 114,000 points before the next level. About 3 months pass and finally Chen Guang finishes the test. Chen Guang lies in the middle of mountains of sharpened pencils, with the thought that now he is unrivaled at this and is finally free. After thinking for a bit, Chen Guang realized that in the 4 activations of the mug, he had already spent a long time inside it, which meant that he was already an 80-year-old grandfather. He realizes that it's getting to the point where the tests are going to get longer and longer. Chen thinks about how the goddess isn't stupid, and she's doing tests. He has nothing to worry about. A very bright yellow glow bursts out of the mug. It bursts out like an explosion. The goddess manages to free herself thanks to Chen Guang sharpening pencils for 3 months. Now the goddess is no longer a prisoner in a mug, but rather a homebody who is not allowed to go outside. Pink glittery threads are released from the mug and spread around the room. They hook up to Chen Guang's phone, and it's like they're connecting to him. Then also such threads fly up to the laptop and connect to it. The goddess says that while she can't keep her cloudy clothes on while at the computer, what could be more important than hanging out online? The phone rings, breaking the morning silence of Chen Guang's sleep. Chen Guang has someone calling his phone, thus disturbing his sleep. It's Wen. She asks Chen Guang why he doesn't come into the library anymore. She thinks he's avoiding her. Chen gets dressed and tells him that they had a meeting with the exchange students. Wen calls him to play at an internet cafe. Chen Guang walks calmly out of the dormitory and sings something to himself. On the way, he meets his friend who asks him where he is going, because there are no classes at the university. Chen Guang replies that he is going to an internet cafe with Wen. The friend replies that Wen is incredible, she's very beautiful, and also great at video games. They think Chen is also great. Friends follow Chen Guang for company. They want to watch them play. Chen Guang tells them that they will be able to watch the strongest duo in history play. Chen Guang has been practicing for this in the circle. Van asks the guys to hurry up and waves at them. They all instead come to internet cafes and sit down at their computers. Wen and Chen Guang sit at their computers while their friends stand behind them, watching. Chen Guang is dissatisfied with the fact that the game takes a very long time to search. While the game is looking up, he decides to show how he learned to sharpen his pencils. In a split second, it sharpens a pencil to perfection. Chen asks how they're doing. He offers to teach them the art. No one is impressed by it, they just laugh at it and say it's boring. Chen Guang calls them a bunch of ignorant people who don't understand anything about art. The mug stands on the table next to the computer like nothing happened. It shows the goddess lying in complete tranquility. The eyes of the goddess glow red and petals seem to fly from her. Wen and Chen Guang lose in their first game of the day. Wen doesn't understand how this is possible, how she could lose. Chen asks his friends if he had any mistakes. They confirm that there were no mistakes. They start the next game and Chen Guang is confident they will win. Chen Guang is unable to break through the player's armor in any way. They suffer another defeat along with Wen in their second game. Wen is very unhappy that they have lost 2 in a row. Against them, for the second time in a row, they face a very strong opponent that they can't handle. Their opponent has no matches played, and it's a brand new account. And he got caught 2 times in a row against Wen with Chen Guang. Chen Guang says it's better to postpone the game. They'll play next time. He wouldn't want to appeal to the goddess to recoup the lost points. Meanwhile, inside the mug, the goddess sits at her computer. She marvels at what humans have created. She says Chen Guang's mobile internet is so unstable, she finally figured out the mail. Chen Guang and Wen are upset that they lost 2 games. Informal-looking guys walk past them. They look unfriendly. Wen can't understand why they lost. After all, they had a big advantage in both games. One of the guys grabs Wen by the shoulder and roughly stops her. He says she stepped on his foot, and she needs to apologize for it. Wen is not in the best of moods. She would be better off not being pissed off after 2 losses. She clenches her fist and looks determined. She says she's going to make him apologize now. She punches the guy grabbing her shoulder right in the face and he passes out. They run off holding the guy in their arms and apologize for his behavior. It's hard for Chen Guang to contain his laughter because the guys dared to molest Wen. The friends cry, for they now realize how much pressure Chen was under all this time. He asks to be treated more respectfully. Wen asks what's wrong. Chen Guang had already seen her in action and wasn't intimidated, not like her friends. She doesn't understand what they are making such a fuss about. Chen recalls how he was on the verge of death when Wen hit him. The friends decide they need to get back to the dormitory right away. Chen Guang tries to leave with them, but Wen says they still need to go to the library. Chen Guang and Wen come to the library all alone. Chen decides that he will make mistakes on purpose to surprise her later, since she doesn't know how he has improved his English. He notices that Wen is a little off herself and it's like she's in her own thoughts. Chen thinks about the fact that next time he will definitely beat the one who got caught 2 times in a row with them. When Wen doesn't pay attention to Chen Guang, he looks at her. She thinks about how she couldn't find out anything about Chen Guang's family, even with her connections. She turns her gaze to Chen Guang and they meet gazes. They look each other straight in the eye for a few seconds. There's an awkward situation and an awkward silence between them. Chen Guang blushes and is embarrassed by this awkward situation. Wen asks why Chen Guang is looking at her so intently. He replies that it was just a coincidence. He was tired from studying and thought for a moment. He doesn't understand why he got so nervous at the sight of her. He, with a red face, asks why Wen is scaring him. She replies to him that she sees him studying hard, and she decided to give him some of the reward up front. At this time, she thinks she is smiling at him, but he says she is scaring him. Chen Guang asks if she's serious and not joking about it. Wen strikes and says that she changed her mind and he should try harder to get the reward and pass the exams. They see a guy glaring angrily at them, more specifically at Chen Guang. The guy thinks about the fact that he doesn't understand why Chen Guang likes Wen so much. Chen Guang comes to the hospital with his mother and father to check in. He asks his father if his mother has accidentally stopped her treatment. She answers him that she hasn't stopped because her father worked hard and saved up money, and Chen Guang's old friend gave them 180,000, so she's doing fine. Chen Guang is happy, he says, to wait for him while he goes to register. At this time, he thinks about the fact that his father didn't mention Chen Guang's own labor. He thinks his father is lying to her. Chen Guang is standing in line, waiting for his turn to admit his mother to the hospital. Chen Guang receives a call. It's his friend Zhu Jifa calling. He asks if Chen Guang's parents are there and if everything is okay. Chen Guang replies that everything is fine and they will be checking in now. Zhu Jifa offers to meet him once he's settled his affairs. Toon turns out to be in the hospital too, which is a good coincidence. She notices Chen Guang first and approaches him, wondering what he's doing here. Chen Guang also notices Wu Tong. He notes the fact that she looks completely different without her uniform. Wu Tong approaches Chen Guang and asks what he is doing at the hospital. He tells her that mom has a health problem and they are about to check in. He asks what she is doing at the hospital. She wishes his mom well and says she's here to check on a friend. She goes off on patrol. Chen Guang says goodbye to her and wonders if she is somehow too kind. The doctor tells Chen Guang something while standing by his mother's bedside. Chen Guang is shocked by the news he was told by his mother's attending physician. It turns out that his mother's attending physician is leaving for medical school and will be replaced by a doctor who has recently returned from there. Her name is Dr. Tan. The doctor assures Chen Guang that he has nothing to worry about because Dr. Tan is an experienced doctor and she has saved people from the other side of the world more than once. Chen Guang feels uneasy about the situation. Dr. Tang enters the room. The mother's attending physician notices Dr. Tan walking into the office just then. Dr. Tang greets everyone in the room and confirms that she will be treating Chen Guang's mother. Chen Guang is surprised that it's the girl he picked up drunk. Dr. Tan knows that Chen Guang is working as a cab driver to pay for his mother's treatment. She looks troubled. She thinks about the fact that she'll have to try her best to dispel Chen Guang's prejudices about her. Chen Guang runs up to the doctor and asks to discuss a matter with her. She says they'd better get out so as not to disturb the others. Chen Guang and Dr. Tang leave the room. They walk a little away from the office. Dr. Tang apologizes to Chen Guang for the situation. Chen Guang tells her that he would like another doctor to treat his mother. Dr. Tan feels uncomfortable about this and is embarrassed about it. She recalls being given entry-level jobs, such as sorting out paperwork in an office. She has also been asked to just change an IV or just watch over a patient. She recalls how she resented being treated like an intern because she was a doctor who had trained abroad and had already worked at the hospital for 2 months. The last thing she remembers is thinking about why she wasn't considered a worthy doctor at the clinic and how Chen Guang came to pick her up. She tells Chen Guang that she does not agree with his decision and that she is very aware of his mother's condition. She claims that there is no doctor better than her in this town. Chen Guang resists. He says he doesn't want his mother's life to be in the hands of someone who drinks to the ultimate. Dr. Tang doesn't know what to say to that. Chen Guang continues. He says that his father's friend was cured of the same ailment by Dr. Liu, and he would like him to be the one to treat her. Dr. Tan thinks about how she made a mistake. She shouldn't have ruined her image as a doctor, and it's all her fault. She agrees, but she says that she will assist in the treatment, and she also says that Dr. Liu's services are many times more expensive than hers. Chen Guang thanks her and asks her not to be offended. He offers to take her out to eat as an apology. She thinks he doesn't trust her at all. Chen Guang exhaled calmly. He was now calm and could relax. Dr. Tan refuses. She says she will transfer his mother to Dr. Liu for treatment. If he can't pay for his services, then she will take her back. She feels like kicking him. The next day, Chen Guang also comes to the hospital to see his mother. Next to Chen Guang's mother's bed, Dr. Liu is standing next to Chen Guang's mother's bed. Chen Guang walks over to the net with papers. He goes to Dr. Liu. He asks him to check his mother's labs. Dr. Liu first asks if he's related to her, then agrees to look at her labs. Dr. Liu talks about how it's not clear yet, but a kidney transplant may need to be done soon. He says we can't wait any longer and it's best not to tell the mother. Chen Guang is puzzled, for he thought the drugs would help his mother. He asks the doctor how this is possible, since many people have good results after taking these medications, and it didn't work for her. Dr. Liu explains to him that people have different physiology. He says that once a donor is found, the transplant will be done immediately. He says that Chen Guang better prepare for the upcoming expenses. Chen Guang thanks the doctor while he thinks about why his kidney can't fit his mother. It's a sunny day. Chen Guang went outside to ponder the whole situation. He sits leaning against the wall and remembers that Dr. Tan also said he might have to get a kidney transplant. He doesn't understand why his mother isn't getting better. Chen Guang remembers the goddess and decides to ask her for help. He pulls out a mug and tries to summon the goddess to ask her to help his mother. The goddess listens to his call and decides to help him with it. The goddess flies out of the mug illuminated with golden rays. Chen Guang is happy about it. Chen Guang gets close to the goddess. She says she already knows about his mother and asks him not to come closer. The goddess says she can't help right now. Chen Guang must pass at least 50 tests before she can help his mother in any way. The level of the Holy Grail is too low. Chen Guang is determined. He suggests that the goddess start taking the tests now. The goddess explains that this is impossible, as it is necessary for the Holy Grail to regenerate after each test. She says there is another way to help his mother. Chen says he would do anything for his mother, absolutely any sacrifice. She tells him that there is a world of life in the circle, and if he reaches the top of the world and rings the bell of destiny, he can change his fate. She says that it will be possible to apply this effect to his mother, and the right person will immediately want to give his mother's kidney. How fast it will be depends only on his efforts. Chen Guang is transported to the entrance of the world of life. He can see a huge floating island with a hanging bell. He's looking right at that bell. He's agitated by this situation. For now, Chen Guang doesn't understand what he will need to do in the world of life. He calls out to the goddess and doesn't understand where she could have gone. She replies to him that she can only guide him to enter the world, and once he enters the world, he can't just go back. Chen Guang has to think it over. Chen Guang again says that he is willing to do anything for his mother. The goddess can't figure out if he's that brave or if he's that stupid. The goddess lets him into the world of life with a sharp slap on his back. He falls from the sky and screams. Chen Guang falls from the sky and hits right on the bell of destiny. He thinks about the fact that this bell is quite strange and incomprehensible. He sees a bunch of animals with red eyes that are in one place looking at one point. All of their red eyes seem to be directed at Chen Guang. It looks creepy. The goddess forcibly pulls Chen Guang out of the life world by grabbing him with her hand. Chen Guang doesn't understand what's going on, as he has literally been yanked out of the world. The goddess begins to recite a spell to borrow the power of the bell. She asks the god of this world, the god of chaos, to grant her, the glass goddess, the ray of destiny. Chen Guang looks at it. It's very mesmerizing. He's looking at the goddess's body. The goddess pulls a single ray of fate straight from the bell of destiny. She tells Chen Guang that she, the goddess, has once again saved him. Chen Guang is transported to the ordinary world. He thanks the goddess for having her. He praises her figure. The goddess says he must forget what he saw. Chen says he understands and has already forgotten everything he saw. He thanks the goddess for her help, because he would have had a hard time with the bell of fate. He returns to the hospital to his ailing mother and father. Chen Guang and his father are sitting in the ward. His father asks about his mother's condition. Chen tells him that his mother will be fine. He says that God will help them. Dr. Tang beckons Chen Guang. She wants to talk about something. Chen thinks about the fact that there is likely news about a kidney transplant. Dr. Tang and Chen Guang walk in absolute silence down the hallway. Dr. Tang stops and tells Chen Guang that a patient has appeared willing to donate his organs and the chance of compatibility with his mother is very high. The exact results will be in a few days. Chen Guang is very happy about this. His tears are protruding. He thanks Dr. Tang. Chen Guang wipes a tear from his eye. Now he can be calm for his mother. Dr. Tan says there's nothing to thank her for. She just returned the favor. She says her mother should not tell her mother about it. Also, she reminds her that kidney transplant is an expensive procedure. Chen Guang says the money will be there on time. Father and son sit in complete silence. Chen Guang decided to tell his father from where he took the money. His father doesn't believe the stories about how Chen Guang made so much money. He thinks he's on some rich lady's allowance. Chen Guang doesn't understand what the problem is, because he did as his father asked. He told the truth. Father says they still need 300,000 yuan anyway. He suggests selling uncle's house. Chen Guang is against it. He doesn't want them traveling around in rented apartments. Chen says he'll find the money. He's always relied on his father, and now it's his turn to rely on him. Sister actresses sleep cuddled together, blessed with sunlight. Their phone starts ringing. It's Chen Guang calling them. Shi Wei picks up the phone and tells Yaga that it's Chen Guang calling. Jade snatches the phone from his sister. She wants to talk to him herself. Yeg answers the phone. She asks why he decided to call and what he wanted. Chen Guang asks when they can meet. Yage didn't expect this, but she's glad she doesn't have to broach the subject for a long time. Yage tells Chen Guang that they are abroad now and have everything scheduled a month in advance. She suggests they see each other as soon as they return. Chen Guang is fine with everything. He wishes them a good rest. He expects that a month will be enough time for him to deal with the hospital. He thinks he should make amends for the incident on the mountain road. He exhales calmly. He can be calm about his mother's health again. Guy thinks about how you can't always rely on other people's help. He has a little more time before 12 o'clock. He's enjoying what a good and productive day he's had. Chen Guang's friends do not understand what happened to him. He is very happy. He's humming a little song to himself. He's not looking at the road in front of him. His friends are embarrassed for him and want to pretend they don't know him and want him gone. Chen Guang steps on a lying banana peel and loses his balance. He slips and flies into the water, not realizing what even happened. The hero falls into the water with big splashes flying everywhere. His friends laugh at him. They say that apparently Chen Guang really likes to swim. He's screaming to get out. He just bought himself a new cell phone. Passers-by take his picture and laugh at him while he waits for help. Zhongbai tries to call his idol and divine driver, Chen Guang. He doesn't understand why he can't get through to him. Chen Guang thinks he might catch a cold. He wants to buy himself a new cell phone. He recalls that there were a lot of people with phones, and now he can't escape the tide of popularity. He sees a bunch of posts and mocking him under the post where he fell in the water. Everyone is laughing at him on the internet, and someone even managed to write his name. Chen Guang wants to find out who he is, and why he is so bold to write his name on the internet. It turns out to be Dong Tao. He writes on his page that he's a champion swimmer, and Chen Guang didn't dare to compete with him. Chen Guang thinks about Dong Tao calling himself a champion. Dong Tao pisses Chen Guang off after all. He let him become the champion. Chen Guang won't let it go. Chen Guang went out to find Dong Tao. He wants to take revenge on him and teach him good behavior. It makes him angry that he can't find it anywhere. As soon as he gets back, he wants to take out his anger on the newcomers to the video game. Someone whizzes by in a car through a puddle and thus splashes Chen Guang. Chen Guang realizes that this is the car of Dong Tao, his abuser. Dong Tao gets out of his car. He seems like a really cool guy. He taunts Chen Guang and calls him a river champion. Chen Guang thinks about the fact that only he remembered him, so there he is. Dong Tao slips him 100 yuan and tells him to buy normal clothes with it. Chen Guang loses his temper. He tells him that he was just looking for him and now he's going to take revenge on him. Dong Tao is a little scared. He doesn't understand what's going on. He thinks about how Chen Guang can't see what kind of car he has and doesn't know who he is. Chen Guang walks ominously towards Dong Tao, rolling his sleeves up to his elbow and looking at him with an evil look. He takes him by the collar and lifts him up. Dong Tao screams and asks for help. His cronies appear around them and immediately create a circle around them. Dong Tao thinks about the fact that he wanted to beat him back in the competition, but he might as well do it now. He threatens Chen Guang and says he still has a chance to get back to his friends. Chen Guang asks if Dong Tao really wants to come to the rescue. Dong Tao replies that he's giving him a chance to apologize, and maybe he will forgive him. Chen Guang loses his temper and throws Dong Tao with a swing in the direction of his car. He flies right into the side of his expensive car and hits his back. The guy takes Dong Tao by the face and says he's about to teach him respect. Dong Tao begs not to do anything to him. He slams Dong Tao's head against his car with all his might, causing Dong Tao to bleed. Chen Guang asks him if he remembered not to make jokes on him. Dong Tao calls his buddies for help again, but they don't really rush to his aid. Chen Guang looks at them angrily and tells them that if they try it, the same thing will be waiting for them. He says that heaven itself wishes him to explain to them how to behave. Dong Tao's friends don't want to approach. They stand silently looking around. They recoil sharply from something, frightened of something. A white car enters the parking lot very quickly and pulls up alongside Dong Tao's buddies. It's Zhongbai. He asks where Wuji University is and asks to get Chen Guang. The cronies point at Chen Guang holding Dong Tao by the collar. Dong Tao thinks something interesting is about to happen and the car owner will attack Chen Guang. Chen Guang doesn't see that it's Zhongbai and tells them all to attack at once. Zhongbai blurts out that he has finally found him, namely the god of driving. Chen Guang recognizes him and throws Dong Tao, saying that Zhongbai crossed the double solid line and owes him 300 yuan. Zhongbai apologizes. Jufei also decided to come. She greets Chen Guang nicely. Dong Tao doesn't realize what's going on and sits in shock at what's happening. Chen Guang tells them to wait, for he must teach Dong Tao a lesson. Zhongbai volunteers to help Chen Guang and teach Dong Tao good manners himself. Dong Tao squeezed into his car in fear of what would happen after those words. Zhongbai says that Dong Tao's car hit him and he should teach him a lesson. The racers pull out their bats and clubs. They're all ready to beat someone up. They start pounding Dong Tao's expensive car from all sides with all their might. Dong Tao looks at it and can't do anything about it. He just looks at what's happening to his car. Chen Guang is shocked too. He thinks this is what he should do and he totally deserves it. Dong Tao is shaking all over. He is very afraid of Zhongbai and his fellow racers. Zhongbai throws his business card at Dong Tao and tells him to come over for all claims. Jufei also throws his card at Dong Tao with a disdainful look on his face. Dong Tao reads Jufei's name and realizes that she is the legendary young principal of the corporation. Dong Tao thinks about how he wouldn't even dare to approach such serious people. The racers walk away from a battered Dong Tao in his trashed car. Chen Guang gets into Junbai's car and they drive away from the scene. Chen Guang asks if they came for driving lessons. He asks why they just couldn't call. Junbai replies that it's just impossible to reach him, so they decide to drive up. He forgot his phone was broken and understands why he couldn't reach him. Zhongbai asks what happened. Chen Guang says nothing and asks where the 20 people came from since there were fewer of them. Chen Guang thinks about the fact that he must somehow cover up his shameful fall into the river. Zhongbai explains that they wanted to take a few people, but over 100 of them came and he couldn't kick them out, so they had to take 20 people. A bunch of expensive cars are parked at the start of the track on Fengquanshan Mountain. Racers are asking for a quick start. They are eager to learn drifting. Chen Guang thinks about how he's wasted this, since he doesn't even know how to teach them. He beckons Junbai over and tells him to go. He thinks of something he'll figure out. Chen Guang says he will go through with everyone once, and they need to memorize everything since there are a lot of people gathered. Chen Guang puts Junbai in the car first, and is about to take him for a ride like he's never taken a ride in his life. He doesn't know how to start such an expensive car because he has never driven such an expensive car. Zhongbai asks what's wrong, to which Chen Guang tells him that he doesn't know how to get her started. Zhongbai shows Chen Guang how to start this car. Chen Guang is running down the mountain road at full speed. He's going full speed, going sideways at full speed into corners. He ran the course in a record 34 hole in 7/100ths of a second. Chen Guang says they're done and asks if Zhongbai remembered anything. Junbai says that he memorized everything, but he himself didn't understand anything at all. Chen Guang calls for the next one to run this track with him. Some time passes and all the while he's driving riders around the mountain track. The rider riding with him thinks about how things looked much easier from the outside. Chen drives the track using all his skill as a driving god. He wonders if the rider who was riding with him even realized anything. The racer says it's not as much as he'd like, but he doesn't think he can reach his level. Chen Guang looks at how many other people there are and thinks about how they won't be able to learn anything today. Jufei is the only one left. She joyfully runs up to Chen Guang. Jufei says the rest of them can split up and mull over everything they saw. She'll spend the rest of the time with him. Junbai says that next time will be the last time he stays with him. Chen Guang says his time is valuable and not worth delaying. She doesn't mind. By the time Chen Guang returns to the dormitory, the dark night has already fallen. Chen Guang's friends are sitting and watching something carefully on a laptop. Chen Guang bursts into the room asking what they are doing here. They freak out and ask him to chill out because he's probably already seen the video. He asks to let him see what they're even watching that's so interesting. This is a video of racers smashing Dong Tao's car. Chen Guang is surprised that someone posted it on the forum. His friends tell him that they thought he had seen it anyway, as there are tons of messages on his mail. Chen Guang replies that he didn't touch his car, and thanks to him, he made money. Chen Guang walks away from them and is about to go to bed. He is shouted down and told he still has something important to learn. Chen Guang doesn't understand what they are talking about. What else could have happened that he absolutely needs to know? It turns out that Teacher Zhou had been waiting for him all day outside the dormitory. Chen Guang goes outside and meets Teacher Zhou there. He asks her why she's still outside since it's so late. She asks him to just follow her and not ask any questions for now. She and the teacher are walking down the street, near the dormitory. There is some awkward atmosphere around. The teacher abruptly turns to Chen Guang and swings at him. Chen Guang thinks about her wanting to hit him. He doesn't realize why. She yells at him and tells him to stop making others worry about him. She's afraid of what might happen to him if the principal catches him. Chen Guang reassures her that the video was filmed outside the school and he wasn't the one who broke the car. She shouldn't worry about the principal. She asks if it's really true and if he didn't touch Dong Tao. Chen Guang says that Dong Tao simply wouldn't dare say anything to the principal. The teacher calms down and tells Chen Guang to go back to the dormitory. Suddenly, something happens to the teacher. She sees something and abruptly turns around. She trips her foot on a rock and starts to fall to the ground. Chen Guang spreads his hand and moves towards her to catch Teacher Zhou. He catches the teacher, but she rests her breasts on Chen Guang's stomach. Chen Guang's heart begins to beat more frequently, and his pulse rate rises from such a thing. The teacher points to the bushes and says she saw a snake there. There really is a snake lurking in the bushes looking straight at Chen Guang. Chen Guang calms down the teacher by saying that he is about to chase her away. The teacher asks him to be more careful. Chen Guang says such a small snake would not attack a human. The snake opens its mouth and lunges at Chen Guang. It is about to bite him. He quickly puts his hand up for the snake to bite his finger. It bites Chen Guang's finger and he manages to catch the snake that way. The teacher says that Chen Guang doesn't need to panic, that everything is fine. Chen says with a nonchalant look that it's okay and he did catch the snake. The teacher looks at Chen Guang's bleeding finger in horror while he looks at the snake he caught. Teacher Zhou decides that she must suck the poison from Chen Guang's finger. She quickly runs up to Chen Guang and takes his finger in her mouth. Chen Guang feels some unusual feeling in his hand. He gets embarrassed and starts to ask with a stammering voice what Teacher Zhou is doing. The teacher has taken his injured fingers and is trying to suck the poison out of them. Chen Guang says that this snake is actually of the rat species and it is not poisonous. The embarrassed teacher asks him why he didn't tell her right away. Chen answers that he didn't dare to interrupt her. And besides, he didn't notice her right away. The embarrassed teacher runs away very quickly, leaving Chen Guang alone with himself. The principal enters the classroom, clearly not happy about something, and the vice president and other university administration walks in with him. He shouts to the whole class and calls out to the student Chen Guang. Chen Guang comes out of the crowd and asks why he might have needed him. The principal says that Chen Guang has terrible behavior, that he fights with students and bullies them. Chen Guang asks what else he does, thus pissing off the principal. Xiao Shen gets into their conversation and starts defending Chen Guang. She says the principal must be mistaken because Chen Guang is a diligent student. She says the director should think again before accusing Chen Guang. Dong Tao enters the office with a smirk on his face and says that the university should punish Chen Guang because he has already sent Pan Jian to the hospital. Otherwise, the university will no longer be respected by the public.
Xiao Shen says that Dong Tao is talking nonsense because everyone knows what Pan Jian wanted to do to her.
Dong Tao says that everyone knows that she likes Chen Guang, and that even before that there were disagreements between Chen Guang and Pan Jian. Lin Jingwei gets into their argument and says that he knows why Pan Jian was beaten up. Chen Guang takes Lin Jingwei by the shoulder and stops him from doing something horrible. He asks him to calm down because there are a lot of teachers looking at them right now. Chen Guang looks angrily at the principal and says that he will go along with him. Dong Tao roots a smirk and fairly walks out of the classroom. The director is excited to have a chance to deal with Chen Guang. Chen Guang's friends volunteer to go with him, as it concerns the whole class. Xiao Shen also says that she will go along with him because she wants to protect him. The vice president reassures Chen Guang and says that the university will make its judgment based on the actual situation, and all he has to do is tell the truth.